Let's stand and give a salute to the flag, which is on the correct side tonight. Yay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call the school board meeting to order. Jim? Yes? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Where's Phyllis? Oh, there you are. Hi, Phyllis. Unanimous, Phyllis.
Okay. Our agenda tonight is very, very simple. We're going to spend 99% of our time getting answers from Mr. Ambrose and his staff on all the questions that have been submitted by the members of both boards. And in interest of making sure that we release all of our hardworking administrators as efficiently as possible, I'd like to ask if everyone could agree that we don't make comments on questions or on answers or anything like that, that we simply get a chance to have him give us our responses, and that if we have further questions, we can ask them of him. But let's leave editorializing out of it and allow them to go home. Is that all right with everybody?
78?
Yes.
Okay.
If I can interject just one moment. I do not want anyone to not ask all the questions or clarifications, but
Absolutely.
there are 78 questions. All right, so at 4 minutes per, I'll let you do the math. That doesn't mean if you don't have questions or want to, please, could you further explain or something? That's not what I'm attempting to do. But I just thought, for your information, 78 questions at 4 minutes a question, so whatever you want to do, that's entirely up to you.
Okay, great. Following Mr. Ambrose's presentation, we will have public comment and then committee comments. So if there's comments to be made, that would be the time. Let's begin by, may I have a motion to accept our minutes of November 15th? Okay, that would be Sandy and Jim Doggett seconding. Are there any additions, corrections, comments? Yes.
There wasn't much information in the minutes.
Well, that's because most of it was going through the questions and answers, which are posted on the website.
Okay.
All in favor? You're abstaining, or are you opposed, or what?
Are you going to call for what?
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Do you want to do your minutes?
No, we're going to have a minute. We do have one nomination, ladies and gentlemen, later on. And if you notice, it is very short. There was one thing, I remember now. If you recall, the last meeting was school board and invited the budget committee. It is reversed tonight. This is actually a budget committee meeting, but where we have a quorum, we have to have a meeting, all right? And I believe it's been publicly posted and all that. So we are, in a sense, the invitees tonight. Doesn't mean we can't ask questions as a school board, all right?
Okay.
Would you like us to do our nomination now, just so we can get that piece of business out of the way?
That's fine, yes.
Yep, great.
Great. I'd just like to take a moment to nominate Sandra Woodman. She'll be replacing Heidi Levitt, and the position is the special education counselor at the high school. So Heidi became our guidance director, and Sandra will replace her. And the looks like I don't know, did Phyllis send out this information to you all? Okay, so I think they're all set, the salaries there, documents.
Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Jim Baker, Corey seconded. I'm not sure if you know who the players are. All right. Any discussion? That's all in favor? Aye. That's unanimous.
Do you have anything else you want to get out of the way?
I believe that's it, isn't it?
Do you want to do your minutes?
Oh,
No, next meeting.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
Meeting next week. We'll do
Okay, good.
this. Thank you.
Well, then you are up, Tom.
All right.
Thank you.
Finally. I don't know who's more excited to have these questions to you, me or Michelle.
Can everybody, am I in anyone's way?
No, it's up high. You're not that tall.
I'm just gonna move over a little so I can see people. It's always awkward to be standing quasi behind someone. I already forgot my water. So,
Gotta have that.
yeah.
It's in the directory. It's in the drive, yeah, okay.
All right, so if everyone could do me a favor and just go right to page 1 and stay with me as I do this, because I know it's tempting to want to go through and find your question and like I'm already managing the class, right? And look at the answer. Same process as last time. We did not answer any duplicate questions. We tried to keep it to the specific questions for this round. There were a few duplicates. And I just want to take a moment to mention, the district understands the impact of taxes on the communities. And we are working very hard with all the players involved to balance the needs of the district while, might be, you see where those little green buttons are? Those can be pretty loud when we bump them, so everyone good? Just wanted to help. You can turn them off, but it's a pain to turn them back on, so I don't want you to, I know what that's like. So anyway, we're working very hard to balance supporting the community's taxes while analyzing the needs of the district. I just want to remind everyone, the board asked me to do 3 things. Tell them what I felt like we needed, tell them what it would look like to have a 2% increase, and tell them what it would look like to have a 2% decrease. Well, it turned out that the increase of salaries just in the CBAs and for the rest of the employees in our district was about 2.8%. So what we did was we presented a budget that reduced about 2.8%. The actual reductions in this budget, if they move forward the way they are closer to 1.1 million. But we added some professional development money and some needs for special education. So it came out to be about $950,000 of reductions, which is roughly a $3,500 decrease from year to year. I just want to make sure everyone understands it's a $1.1 million reduction that was presented for the first round, and the actual change from year to year is $950,000. So it's really important for the taxpayers in the community to know that we recognize that the burden on them is very high, but we also recognize that we have students that have needs, which you saw when I gave you the quote wish list, the great question that was asked, what would you do if money wasn't an object? Well, we all recognize money is an object. So for those of you who were not here last time, I hope you've read the slides from 11:15. So also, quick note, the school board will deliberate and send a budget to the budget committee on 12/6/2017, next Wednesday. All right, so here we go. Slide, page number 3. The first question is, advertising was up by 40%. Why? This is an increase of $1,000 from $2,500. So it made the total $3,500 to cover advertising for the entire district. It can be misleading to look at the percentage increase. Also, for those of you who weren't here last time, I answer each question and then I wait and take follow-up questions. We don't go back. We have to do them as we go. Because again, as Pete said, 78 questions at 4 minutes apiece. It's going to be a long evening if we went back at the end. Any follow-ups on that one? Okay. Travel's up 31%. Why? The budgeted amount of $5,265 for FY19 has been estimated based on the last 2 years' actuals. FY16 was $58,038, and FY17 was $47,535. Any questions? Yes.
Is that district-wide, or is that just high school?
We would have to ask Michelle. I don't know. She'll be here shortly. I don't know the account code that was attached to. So let's, if we have a question for Michelle, just write it down. We'll ask her when she comes back. Yes, Corey?
Is this the only transportation travel question in this bundle? What?
No, there's many, many.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll say my question for that.
Okay, thanks, Corey. Yep. Books and periodicals up 25%. Why? So almost $42,000 was cut from the budget requested for FY18. So last year, almost $42,000 for books was cut. The budget for FY18 would have been $140,000 without the cuts. The FY19 budget request of $122,672 to cover all district programs is based on what is necessary to meet programmatic needs.
Real quickly, I think I'm one of several people who submitted that question. My question was, using Chromebooks and having subscriptions and having text online and so forth, we would have expected to see some kind of a reduction in paper, periodicals, books, and so forth.
The hope would be that way at the upper middle and high school. I would say that philosophically, I don't subscribe for K-6 that technology should replace text in hand. But I think that it's hard for me to know because I haven't been here long enough to know what the expenses were in the past and the projection on that. I do caution everyone to realize that particularly for K-4, philosophically, it's far better to have books in hands than computers, especially when they're learning how to read versus reading to learn. So when you're learning how to read, posting, thinking, and looking at a paper book is very, very important. So that might be reflected in my philosophy, Mary, but I think that overall, I would hope that over time we would see a reduction in paper books at the upper levels, but we would also probably see an increase in software and online subscriptions. So I'm not sure how that's all going to play out yet, but it is very much worth looking into.
Thank you.
These numbers, however, are about the high school budget, right?
Well, some of them are district-wide.
Oh,
And the hard part was we learned something, Jim, by going through this process, which is that we really have to ask people to be a little more specific in the questions, because sometimes they put the account line and then the question, but it was difficult to understand where they were with this. But we can certainly come back to this. Anything that I'm talking about now, if we have a question for Michelle, she'll be here shortly. She had an obligation that she couldn't get out of, but she's on her way.
Jim, what I can tell you is there's no way that 122 is high school. That's district-wide.
Yeah, I think that's district-wide. And
That includes all novels, trade novels, English novels, books, periodicals from libraries, et cetera.
It did say in that one, Jim, it's to cover all district programs.
because the total for books on the budget in here was 60,261 on page, the summary total. And online subscriptions was 181,722 for a total of about 242,000.
I could ask Michelle to clarify when she gets here if you'd like.
Thank you.
If you have I'm not writing these down, so if you have a question for Michelle, make a note for yourself, and when she gets here, we'll take a moment to run those by her, okay?
Yeah.
So please note the page in the question. All right, next page, 4, multimedia, up by 27.6%. Why? The budget increase is $427 from the approved budget for FY18. So in FY18, we budgeted $1,547.03, and the FY19 request is $1,973.90. The reason is that it's primarily due to the request of the art and health ed at the middle school. Any further questions on that one? Substitute professional salaries up by 15.7%. The answer for that is increased Family Medical Leave Act absences with multiple long-term subs. Next question is, did we have an unusually high number of sick days last year? What would warrant this kind of increase? And the answer is that the personal illnesses vary from year to year and year to year. And I would elaborate on that by saying that good budgeting would be you'd look at a 3-year average. So I am operating under an assumption, which I know is dangerous, but I know that Michelle is looking at 3-year averages for most things that we budget for. Page 5, other professional services up by 19%. What is this?
I'm so sorry. On the 3-year averages, are you looking at 3 years averages of actuals that have been spent or budgeted amounts?
Well, typically we would look at both, because sometimes you want to be careful not to. Again, substitutes is a very dynamic line. We don't know what's going to happen. So I would assume that you kind of look at both. What I do is I look at both and then try to make a strategic decision about what's reasonable. But where our district does not have very many established reserve accounts, I'd be more likely to go with the 3-year average of what was budgeted for that line right now.
Okay.
If we had a large reserve built up in regular ed and I knew that we could cover it if there was a problem, I would not hesitate to reduce that and then use the reserves if there was a problem.
Thank you.
All right, so other professional services are up by 19%. What is this? Increases are related to special education services and other related student services such as psychological, speech, occupational, and physical therapy. In addition, last year, part of the allocations for a psychologist was moved to the salary lines. This money is back in the contracted services, other professional services line, and speech costs did go down this year, which, if you remember, those are driven by individual education plans, and while others rose slightly due to rate changes. Most of the money is due to the reallocation for psychologists. We continue to try to hire a school psychologist but cannot find one due to salary constraints and high demand for these services. And just so you know, there's another slide about that topic coming up in a few minutes. Okay? Oh, thanks. That's actually better.
We couldn't see the screen.
Yeah.
Video, but we're gonna.
Okay. Any questions about that one? All right. Professional salaries total is down by 5.21%. Is this due mostly to attrition? Yes. IEP, individualized education plans, driven needs. What percent of Sanborn Regional School District students are identified, and how does it compare to statewide average? What percentage of Sanborn Regional School District students are identified at 504? How long does this designation last for each designation on average, and how does it compare with the state? What is the distribution pre-K, elementary, middle school, and high school? So again, this is dynamic in nature, so we gave you as of 11/15. There are 644 enrolled students at the high school, 18% with IEPs, which are individualized education plans, and 12% with 504 plans. If I'm going too fast, tell me. I can talk fast, but I'm trying to keep us moving. Good. Students with IEPs typically have plans for a minimum of 3 years and can span as long as 18 years if they were identified at age 3 and stay until they are 21 years old. 504 plans vary in length. I will note that 504 plans are reviewed annually, and the team determines if they continue to need accommodations, that they being the student. There is no state data on percentage of 504 plans per school district. The state average of students identified in 2016 with an October 1st count was 16.1%. The rate was calculated by the total student count trends consensus data, which provides total enrollment statewide and total identified students statewide. So you can see there's a, thank Ms. Gutterman for the neat little pie chart and the great chart for y'all to take a look at. Yeah.
I just want to add something to your information about special ed and IEPs, that those are reviewed every 3 years to determine if students are still eligible.
That's right. IEPs are determined annually. 504 plans are determined based on need because they're medical in nature. Thank you, Cheryl. All right. Contract for student transportation. I'm on page 7 now. These will be renegotiated next year. Question, what considerations, if any, are being given to routes and bus capacity? What about high school usage and routes? The answer is there are 2 separate bus contracts, one for regular education and one for special education needs. The contract for regular education is a 5-year agreement from 7/1/2015 to 6/30/2021 with 3 single-year renewal options for a total maximum of 8 years. The contract for special education with Durham School Services is a 3-year agreement from 7/1/2017 to 6/30/2020 with 2 single-year renewal options for a total maximum of 5 years. We continue to evaluate bus routes with the transportation providers to improve efficiencies and cost savings. This is an area that we will be diving into in more detail in the future. But I want to give you a heads up on this one. So I rode the bus with the elementary kids the first couple days of school. And I thought to myself, I'm on the bus for 20 minutes. We could probably extend this bus run 6, 8, 10 minutes and condense some runs down. Well, what I've been told is that there was a motion to do that in the past, and some folks in the community were not real happy with that. So I really want to be careful to say that we're willing to look at this, but we want to have a conversation about the impact and the amount of times that kids spend on bus, that it'll be a balanced approach, right? But it is certainly something that I personally just feel like it's an area that I've identified for efficiency for our organization, potential efficiency, along with many other things that you'll be hearing about in a minute. All right, so number 7. Oh, I'm sorry, were you guys okay with that one? All right, the next question is student transportation homeless. There's no increase. Why is this separate and district expense from other student transportation costs? According to the McKinney-Vento law, districts are required to provide transportation to families as determined appropriate by the homeless liaison. These students are not always identified students with disabilities. Hence, there is a separate line for homeless regular education students. The homeless transportation law may require us to transport students out of district and/or out of state.
Can I ask how many students we have this year? So we had the data last year when the budget was presented.
There are 9 currently, but give me 1 second, I can tell you.
And do we know the cost? Last year it was almost $90,000 for 13. So where are we at this year?
There are currently 9 students with an expected cost of about $49,000.
Okay.
But that does change as students
Sure.
move in and out.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you have something more, Sandy?
No, I just said thank you.
Oh. Little information about homeless. If the student is homeless, how do we know what district's responsible for transporting and where they're being transported to?
Jody?
So it's essentially where the student is currently residing or the last district that they attended before they became homeless. So if a student became homeless in, say, Exeter, and then they were to move into the Kingston or Newton community, they would have a right to either attend school in Exeter, which is generally where you start, because that's where they have been enrolled, that's where they're familiar, and you don't want to make additional changes when they're already struggling with being homeless. But they do also, depending on the distance, because sometimes you might have students going to Rochester, then they have a right to also go in the community in which case they're currently residing. Both districts under the McKinney-Vento law can share transportation costs. If they don't agree, it ends up becoming a 50-50 split. So logically, every district just shares transportation costs 50% with the other one. So they do kind of have their choice. And then what can get complicated is some students, they might be transient a lot, they might be moving every 2 weeks. They technically, if they wanted to, could change schools every 2 weeks, which then changes the school of origin. So we might be paying for a student for, say, 4 weeks, and then we might no longer be paying because they chose to enroll somewhere else and we're no longer attached to that family.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just say that it is very complex. And Jody did a great job of summarizing it, but there's a lot of nuance in there that can go on, as you can imagine. Page 8, building and site improvements completed in FY17. Swayze Gym and Chase Field House, Americans with Disability Act toilet rooms. That was a Warren article. Special Education Office Wall creation and construction. The SAU offices creation and construction. The Bakey School underground storage tank, which is called a UST for fuel oil storage. The Department of Environmental Services mandated deficiencies compliant, so that underground storage tank was necessary for that purpose. And district-wide Bakey Memorial Middle and High School surveillance camera upgrades, and district-wide Bakey Memorial Middle School and High School security door control access upgrades. Page 9, actual versus budget, spent, encumbered it with contract, and by how much? So the Swayze Gym and Chase Field House, the actual contract amount was $121,626, and the budget was $167,000. So the SPED office wall construction was $2,500, and it came in at $22,609. The SAU office construction was budgeted at $13,471, and it came in at $14,887.75. And the Bakey School underground storage tank was budgeted at $46,630, and the actual was $46,630. District-wide surveillance camera upgrades. The budget is $121,375.83, and the PO remains open. And the budget for the district-wide control security access upgrades, which is for doors, PO is still open, and it's $48,010. Okay, to move on to page.
This surveillance camera, the upgrades, was that in the prior year's budget?
Let me ask Steve. Is Steve here tonight? Yes. Hey, Steve, can you answer that?
Sure. I do believe it was. Okay.
A lot of the funds were kind of funded from the previous year, and then they replaced the following year to start the process. Yes.
Because I recall a facilities meeting where we were asked about funds for doing upgrades on cameras, I think at the seminary property.
Yeah.
But that's separate from this number. Okay.
All right. Everyone ready? All right. Page 10. The special education planning grid for FY17, FY18. A, IEP individualized education plans by building, service required, and grade. Noted whether parent advocacy or federally mandated. SPED out of district placement. We didn't really know what anon meant, but we assumed anonymous. For the ending year, institution, service provided, location, tuition, residence, and transportation costs. You can see the grid here for that, and the answer is continued on the next slide. So I'll read that. Each student receives individualized instruction and services. Services range from specialized instruction from a special education teacher, para support, either shared or as one-to-one, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, physical therapy, musical therapy, vision services, behavioral services, and consult from a board-certified behavior analyst, etc. I just want to be clear, this is just a list. It's, including but not limited to type of thing. It's a wide range of services. There are currently 7 students placed in out-of-district placements. 4 of the 7 students are placed in New Hampshire out-of-district programs, with an annual tuition rate range of $33,000 to $100,922, and 3 of the students are placed in out-of-state and out-of-district programs with an average tuition rate range of $82,000 to $182,852. In addition to tuition rates, some programs charge additional fees for paraprofessional support and related services such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy. Plus, there are the transportation costs associated with out-of-district placements. Tuition rates for New Hampshire private schools increase 5% each year, and out-of-state programs usually increase 7 to 9%. It is federally mandated that the districts protect the identity of students receiving these services. Due to these mandates, the district is prevented from supplying information on federal mandates versus parent advocacy or the names of all the out-of-district institutions, as it could be considered identifiable information. Yes, Cheryl.
About halfway down the paragraph, currently 7 students placed in out-of-district placements. 4 of the 7 in New Hampshire with an annual tuition rate. Is that per student, that range, or is that
Yes.
all 4?
No, that's per student.
Thank you.
So one student could cost $33,000, another one could be $89,000, another one could be, it's just a range to give you a sense.
Okay.
Page 12, the final budget for FY 18-19, including salary details and budget additional costs for acclimating new staff, including admin, professional staff, support staff. That is a very complicated question to answer. We tried our best. A budget is a map. Depending on who is hired and who leaves, the numbers can vary greatly. All members have a copy of the proposed FY 18-19 budget. The current year has been made available and the annual reports are available from any year. The costs are difficult to quantify because we do not know who may leave, and there are often changes at the state and federal level that require professional development. The National Council for Teaching in America's Future conducted a national survey which determined that the cost of acclimating a new teacher varies by district size and geographic location, but generally ranges from $10,000 to more than $20,000 per teacher. So I just want to speak, so for example, you just hired me, I may be a new superintendent, but in my previous district as an assistant superintendent, the district paid for a number of days of what's called new superintendent training. So I went to these seminars and learned about laws and budgets and things that I may not have known even as an intern in the superintendency. You haven't had to pay those costs for me. But if I were brand new right out of a high school principalship, we may incur those costs. So I really, it's just a very difficult question to quantify. So I asked Mr. Trammell to do some homework on this. And I do think that the estimate of 10 to 20,000, depending on the district, the teacher, and the initiatives, is a pretty fair estimate. So if the teacher's fresh out of college, it's going to be on the 20,000 end. If the teacher's been teaching for 8 years, it might be 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 to get them caught up to speed. You have to remember that a professional development day in our district costs an estimate of $80,000 for one day, right? When you consider all the salaries, the buildings, professional developers, and all the things that you have to do. It's amazing how expensive it is. Oh, thank you. Mr. Stack just gave me a...
Maybe.
Okay, all right. Are we okay with that question? May I move on? All right. The high school reports 12B emergency event log for prior FY and enrollment planning baseline. The admin expected enrollment plan for the next FY. So there's a link in there for the 12B report, which is at the back of your packet. We printed any link for you tonight. Enrollments are calculated by moving the current enrollments forward 1 year. The high school anticipates the following after talking to the Ellis School, and these are an estimate. Sorry, I said Timberlane in the slide. We'll fix that. So grade 9, they're expecting 183, grade 10, 149, grade 11, 154, and grade 12, 174, for a total of 660.
How many freshmen do we have now?
149.
Pardon me?
149 is what it would be because they just move it up.
Okay.
So the grade 10 is the current grade 9.
Because last year, in the report that we received, they said that they anticipated, says, next year's freshman class will top 180 compared to the current class of 166, and we have 149. That's 31 kids. That's quite a difference from what we were told and what we budgeted for and anticipated.
I think we had an enrollment drop. We had an enrollment drop that happened. I was a K2 principal.
Yeah.
I had 21 kids move into first grade 3 weeks before school started. So it's really, you know.
I know that
Yeah.
with transition to high school, there are a lot of students that don't come. They go to private schools. They may, be homeschooled. They may be whatever. And so I'm wondering if we're looking at 183, are we just looking at the raw data of how many freshmen we have now and how many are from Ellis?
Well, it's really interesting because we did a study of the last few years of that transition data, and that's in this. We'll talk about that in just a moment, okay?
Yeah.
Brian, I think we've had a drop, and do you want to look at that for a few minutes and we can come back and answer it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Stack's going to work on that
That
question.
number
for just a
was
moment.
accurate if you just took the raw number of students enrolled at Ellis and here. But it's just a significant change, and we've budgeted and asked the taxpayers for money based on topping 180. So, maybe we can be a little conservative and say that, maybe for freshmen next year, it really will be maybe 165, in light of changes that occur.
I would be more likely to budget high and then have funds in reserve than to do the reverse, because we don't have any real reserves as a district.
Right.
So I would just caution you to be aware that if a district doesn't have at least $800,000 in regular education reserves, cutting your teacher lines too close is a very dangerous game to play.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because once the budget's been voted on by the community, you can't raise it.
Right.
So we have to be very, very careful. But I will say that I can't remember exactly where it was, so I'm asking Mr. Stack to look, but there was a drop. So I'm acknowledging that I think it was in that grade that we had a higher number of students enrolled, because I remember noticing it when I was reviewing numbers. I just don't have that in front of me at the moment.
Do we have the information as to those 30 students, their disposition? Because they were physically in the district, either at the middle school and at Ellis.
If you would like us to allocate the manpower to research that, we could, but the reality is that what we're finding is that almost all of our students are just moving to other districts through natural attrition.
Okay.
So I looked into the whole aura that you're alluding to a little bit, which I did say we talk about later, but I am not finding any hard data to show that people aren't coming to Sanborn because they're not happy with Sanborn. What I'm seeing is that there are a lot of families that have had not even a lot, a very small number of families who have had a family history of sending folks to private schools, a very small number of folks who have chosen to go to private school because they weren't happy at Sanborn, and then a large number of folks that are choosing to go to other schools because they moved, just like they've moved in. So I have been looking at those numbers, but honestly, these questions have kind of waylaid any other work for the last month. So that's part of my research. and
Curious,
my
because when I was comparing data
Yeah.
between the books and stuff, I'm like, wow, I wonder how many freshmen we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, so the problem is, so we had a lot of people working on these questions, the numbers got interchanged. I just went back and looked. So that's part of where the issue is.
Oh, so there's an error with the numbers?
So if you want to back out, Mr. Chamel, you can correct the numbers. All the numbers there are right, but they're all in the wrong rows. I went back to our actual October 1st enrollment, and I can see why someone would have interchanged them when they put them in there.
So what are the correct?
So leave the 9th grade alone. The current 10th grade, or the 10th grade, based on current 9th graders, is 167. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
All right, the senior class is 149, that's where that number is coming from. So then the current, or what you have listed there is juniors, which are our current sophomores, is 174. And then the next number for grade 12, you need 154. So if you total that, it's going to be a little higher than 660. You want to do the math?
But Sandra, I just wanted to recognize that I did notice that 167, there was a drop from about 180, but I didn't think it was 30, so that's why I wanted to double
Yeah,
check.
that seemed big. That's why I wanted to
Yeah,
know.
that's why.
Where's the total?
Just total.
183, 167, 170. Brian, what was the junior year total?
174,
And what about seniors?
154.
644.
678.
167.
678?
678, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I'm used to in the past is that we use the October 1st numbers for budgeting because it's dynamic in nature and it's not prudent to keep taking dipsticks through time unless there is, for example, I had a kindergarten group that we did the census research and we knew we had 20 more students enrolling. It's kind of foolish to not acknowledge that. So we try to use the October 1st numbers without being impractical. All right, we're on to 13 out of 49. We're doing okay. Question, what has been spent in the past 3 years with the LaValle Bresinger? How much of what was spent was to develop plans or oversee the following? Capital improvement for 2017-22, the high school vestibule, the middle school roof, the Swayze gym accessibility, and the high school lighting changes in the stairwell. We answered this. We didn't know. I had to find out who LaValle Bresinger was. We haven't spent anything with them, according to my staff. And the architectural firm that was used for the majority of the projects listed was Frank Marinese Architects. Did I get that right, Steve? Thank you. Capital improvements plan for 2017 to 22. $49,000 for the high school vestibule and office design. $15,000 for the middle school roof replacement and design. $28,000 for the Swayze Chase ADA American with Disabilities Act toilet rooms design, and $19,100 for the high school lighting and the stairwell design / built by an electrical firm, Scarponi Electric, totaling $17,485.
I'm not entirely clear on this. The amounts that you have here are the amounts that were paid to the architects, correct?
Steve could answer that.
Correct, yes,
Pardon me?
that is correct.
Okay. And so for the high school lighting,
Yes.
$19,100 was paid to the architects, and then also $17,045 to the electrical firm? Am I understanding that correctly?
I think I need to clarify that. Look at it briefly because that doesn't seem right to me.
It seems kind of high.
Andy, could we ask Michelle that when she gets here?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great. She'll clarify that.
Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, I'm looking at these items and just wondering, did we actually send out requests for proposals, or did we just default go to Frank Marinese architectural firm to request, and these are all well above the bid policy requirements, I mean, $49,000. That's an item.
Two of them are above the bid, 49 for the high school and 28,000 for Swayze, right? I'll ask Steve, he'll answer, but the bid policy is 20,000.
That's been increased.
At that time, Jim, they chose to go with Frank Marinese because of their relationship with him.
Can you come up to the microphone, because I can't hear you?
At that point, we chose to go with Frank Marinese, architect. The school district did because of their recent, or their history with him, as opposed to going to the Valley Bresnia, a lot more expensive architect than Frank Marinese. That was a decision that was made by the SAU office.
So the SAU office has the ability to suspend policy.
No one said that.
I asked a simple question of what these were.
No, can you get the policy that you're referring to? I don't have a computer right now, but I just want to make sure when Michelle gets here, we'll talk about that because she explained to me today, we had a lengthy conversation about the difference between sending something out to bid versus asking for proposals. And so I'm going to table this question until she gets here because she's done the research on it. And it is a fair question, Jim, but I don't understand. To answer your question, there are some policies that have flexibility in them, and I would be happy to research this one for you. My understanding was that this policy about sending things out to bid does have flexibility in it for the SAU office, but I'll wait for Michelle because she did the homework on that.
There is one thing that seems to be omitted from this list, which was what was the cost of developing the $9.5 million capital improvement plan that was done. And, you know, I believe that we were told at the time that Frank Marinese was hired to do that and come up with all the safety things, so I assume they got paid. So maybe they didn't get paid, but it'd be good to know the answer to that, whether they did it.
Last year?
Yeah.
That capital improvement plan was developed, I wasn't here, I don't know.
No, I know. Well,
Was it developed last year?
Right.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was 2 years ago.
Maybe it was 2 years. I think it was last year.
It was adopted last year.
It was adopted last year, so I'm not sure when the architect was paid for it.
I'll find out, no problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry?
Steve, do you know the answer to that? Was
It was adopted last
Created
year.
and adopted last year.
Okay, so
That'd be good to know.
Yeah, thank you.
Charles, did you have a question?
Well, not much as a question, is I want to make it further clear, you're not responsible for this, in this question. I was just trying to do some math, give me 1 second, 3, 4, 5, that there was $113,000 paid to one firm without any bids. And you're not responsible for this.
Thank you,
You
Charles.
weren't here when this happened.
Yeah, but I also...
I make that clear, but
Thank
this
you.
is something that has concerned me and I will look for in the future. I
And
understand discretion, but it's interesting that discretion only went one way for that amount of money.
that's very fair.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually
You're
agree
not
with you.
responsible for this.
I know, I hate to admit it, but I agree with you, Charlton.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about costing and, you know, there is a difference between the formal process of opening a bid in public when it's been sealed versus getting different costs for things. You all know that we have a whole new administration, and when we built the 2 walls in the main office, the initial proposal was 33 grand, and we said, no, we got it down to 12, right? So I think some of this is just kind of leftover stuff from concerns, but on the other hand, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to give us a chance to rectify some of these things. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Carol?
Well, this question was about LaValle Brenzinger, but so the response is Frank Marinese. Are these costs the only things that the district spent on capital improvement plan, or were there other things that were bid or were provided by other architects or firms, whatever?
I think that it would be good for you to write that question down and note the page when Michelle gets here, we'll ask her. But if you look at the question, it said, what has been spent on the past 3 years with La Valley Bressinger, which was 0.
Yeah.
But then it asked for all these costs out for these other specific things. It might have been that the reason why the capital improvement plan wasn't there is because it wasn't listed. So it's not, I think the attempt was to answer the listed question. But it did also say, the capital improvement plan for 2017 to 22, Michelle may just have interpreted that as meaning what was actually done within the plan, not for the literal plan. We'll find out in a few minutes. Number 14, in this money, so we tried to kind of help with the question because it was related to a line, for SST, we had an acronym. We've done so good with that. Oh, it's the question. You got to let it go. All right. SST, SPED, or homeless students, LEA New Hampshire equals local education agency to assist homeless. If any SST, Seacoast School of Technology support should be increased as the number of voc ed student rises. So the answer is the money in this line is for the vocational tuitions at the Seacoast School of Technology, which is the SST. The budget line covers the regular education portion of Seacoast School of Technology. We budget for 100 seats. There's more to come on that one.
Okay.
Yep.
I had a follow-up question on it, so.
Yep,
okay.
it's coming up. We didn't lump that one with the other one. You'll see in a minute. The Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, District 2500, shouldn't this amount be higher given the opioid crisis? If increased, are there any effective prevention programs which could be added? I see we have several drug-free school grant programs. Are those ongoing or still funded? I just wanted to take a minute to thank whoever, I don't know who asked this question, but whoever did, that's really helpful because this is a very serious concern for our school. We have had 15 different more than 10-day suspensions in which 10 or more, up to 10-day suspensions or more that have either been met with by myself or Mr. Trammell since school doors opened in September. 15. So that is a lot, and that's only the ones that came to us. So some of them happen and they don't ask for a meeting with us. And so the answer is that it would be wonderful to fund this more. The middle and high school would like to propose that the school board add the middle school and high school student assistance counselor position to the budget to meet this need. We are currently waiting to find out if that's going to be grant funded for another year. So we're kind of just holding tight, hoping to find out if we can get a grant for that position. And we don't know whether or not it's coming, but it is important to note that adding programs can't occur when we've been asked to produce a budget that reflects an excess of $1 million cut. We just didn't feel like we could put it in there. So it's balance, folks. Balance to the taxpayers with an awareness of what we can afford. And so we felt that we wanted to leave that one to see if we could get a grant to cover the bill for y'all. And if we can't, then we want to talk about it.
When do you expect to learn about the grant?
We were hoping to know 2 weeks ago on Friday. Okay. So we're waiting with bated breath.
So before we have a budget proposal finalized,
I am
we should know.
really hopeful that we'll know by next Wednesday, but if we don't, then not going to know.
So if you remember correctly, when this all started, we received a 2-year grant for the program. We went through the 2 years. When we got to the end of the 2 years, last year at this time, we were budgeting for the position, and we found out way after the fact, way after January, that they were going to grant us an extension. So we ended up staying on for another year in the grant. There's really no guarantee. It's in the governor's office. It could be tomorrow. It could be a month from now. It could be 3 months from now. We just don't know. We really have to put the good faith, in my opinion, put the good faith effort forward to plan the budget for it and hope that maybe things will pan out otherwise. But we've now been going on 3 years of having the grant funding.
Is that state monies you're talking about, Mr. Stack?
It comes from, I believe, New Hampshire Charitable Foundation.
All set?
Can I ask a question about
Oh, yeah,
this?
sure.
I know that some high schools they contract for a licensed drug and alcohol counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And they come in certain days and they handle, meeting students and these issues, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
they
want
usually bill insurance, right? That type of position?
no, not necessarily. So I wanted to know if we have done any research on contracting with agencies that are available to provide a couple of days a week, or maybe 2, 3. I've seen 2 and 3, so days a week where they are physically in the building and meeting with students and working with administration, et cetera.
The only kind of position like that I'm aware of is they bill the student's insurance. So they don't cost the district, but they work, and this is in Maine, so the laws may be slightly different here. But having been a guidance counselor for a long time, I knew that you could get additional support for mental health services, and they will bill the insurance for those services. But I'm going to turn to Jody and Brian because they would know more about the history on that.
Yeah, the short answer is no. We have not researched contracting for that. Again, this has been a grant-funded position, which is great. I do want to note that our person in the role is not a LADAC, which is a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, but they do provide services to the students as well as programming services to the staff as a whole. They also represent our schools, both the high school and the middle school, at a lot of regional and statewide meetings as well.
I'd like to suggest that we do look into LADAC, having a LADAC contract, because it is possible, and I know schools that do it.
I would agree it is, and it would be nice to have. Yeah, great point. So, Mr. Stack, I'll leave that one up to you.
Okay.
All right. Delegation, sorry. All right, number 15, page 15, travel for guidance, $1,000. Why is this dollar amount so low? Mr. Tamela and Mrs. Hume Howard indicated that the high school counselors should increase visitations to top education institutions to promote high-performing Sanborn students and improve SAU 17 visibility and increase the prospects for transfer to top universities. So this amount represents a decrease of $215.52 over last year's adopted budget. That actually should say below last year's adopted budget. In an effort to make substantial reductions to programming budget accounts at the high school, it was not considered a priority to have this line increased. The school will look for other low-cost alternatives to increase exposure to counseling staff to admissions officers on behalf of Sanborn students. So again, it just, when we're tightening things up, this is the type of thing that gets trimmed down some. May I keep going? We weren't really sure exactly what the question was for this next one, so we just said, yes, it's accurate. Custodian salaries for all 4 schools, it's $998.6 million, yes. The next question is, the Fremont Board recently urged co-op purchases of supplies. Is this planned? A cooperative joint contract may attract bids from larger, more efficient firms to our 2 rural locations, allowing lower cost outsourcing of custodial support, speech pathologists, et cetera. It's a work in progress. The superintendents from both will be meeting in December, we hope, to discuss potential costs for supplies. We are not currently looking at outsourcing custodial or speech pathologists. Speech pathologists, they're IEP driven, individual education plan driven. It wouldn't save us anything to share because they would have to be at the district where the needs are. For custodial, the person has to be in the building to do the work, so outsourcing that wouldn't make sense. Yes.
I have a question back on that, the custodian salaries.
Sure.
Is there, how many individuals at each school? How many custodians at the school?
I don't have that much.
Here at the high school, there's 5 custodians at night, 2 during the day. The rest of the schools have 1 day custodian and 2 more.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, thank you for asking. Michelle's here now, so we're going to pause and ask her any questions that you noted prior to her arrival so that we can resume on page 16 once that is complete. And I'm going to use the restroom, if you don't mind, real quickly.
Who had the question? Cheryl?
Page 3. Question, travel up by 31%. Why? Was that question pertaining to district-wide travel being up 31% or high school?
I believe the question was district-wide, that's what we had looked at in the response.
I had a question on page 13, on the Frank Marinese Architects.
Yeah.
You're good enough to respond on a lot of that. I assume this is money that was actually spent. Was there also money spent with them on developing the capital improvement program last year?
I would have to check on that. I responded to this specific question.
Yeah, the capital improvement plan is referenced in the question, but I understand you were assuming what was spent out of it as opposed to developing it. So, okay, I'll send you that question if that's okay.
That would be great.
Thank you.
And mine in the same area on page 13 regarding the capital improvement items. Did we send out, did we offer requests for proposals on these fairly large ticket items, or was there a bid process used?
If you know.
Before you.
Yeah, so.
We realize this is this is the previous people, but regretfully, you're the person sitting in the chair when we find out what we spent.
So it has taken some time to search back into records to make sure that I'm clear on what the response is, because clearly I wasn't here at the time that some of these things were done. And there's a terminology becomes interesting because there's a difference between a bid and a request for proposal and simply competitive pricing and going out and asking, around the community or known vendors for quotes. So in terms of some of the items marked listed here, for instance, the Swayze Gym, I do know that there was competitive pricing that was sought out, and it was in the form of requests for proposals, but it wasn't in the form of a formal bid in that, sealed responses and a bid opening date and that type of thing. And that may be the same with some of these others. I don't know about the roof, if that was a formal bid. I don't think it was. I think it was more seeking out proposals and working with vendors that have had some history here.
Excuse me, Corey.
Well, I think us on the facilities subcommittee might be able to answer one or two from this current year, but relative to the Swayze Chase ADA aspect of things. But we all should be very familiar with, almost all of us have been here when the middle school roof was actually under duress. And that was a last minute fix by a local resident. Mm-hmm. And there was a quite expensive price tag on that. So there was multiple bids on that. So I agree with your statement. Is it a bid, was it an RFP, or was it competitive pricing? And you're right, obviously, because they're over X amount of dollars, there had to be one of those three processes taking place. I can assure you that all 4 line items here, there has been one of the 3, either a competitive bid, albeit an RFP, or albeit an actual sealed bid. We've actually had a hard time, and maybe you might want to speak about this, Michelle, we've had a hard time getting 3 competitive bids in almost all these cases. And the ones that are current. And so needless to say, I think if you look, so I think we should, if we really want to go back historically, I'm not sure how this is impacting the budget moving forward, and I'm not sure how these are impacting the budget moving forward.
Well, as a budget committee member, I need to know the process that's being used, because quite honestly, if you read through this, it appears that we spent $49,000 versus $140,000 project simply for the design of the vestibule and main office space here, or approximately 25% of the overall cost was spent just on design. And if we had done an RFP instead, we could, that's the price of a teacher, almost the price of a teacher. We're spending an awful lot of money on engineering and drawing that would be better spent on education.
We were spending.
I was going to say.
We were. And it's something that, that's something we want to make very clear, I think, that we were.
Or we did.
We did spend a lot.
The reason I'm bringing it up, and this was not my question, I did not submit this question, but it is something that I, as a budget committee member, we'll be looking at as we progress forward to make sure that this kind of item does not happen.
Well, I think that's the role of the facilities subcommittee.
I think that we need to move off of editorializing, as we
Yeah,
all
I think-
agreed, and stick to asking questions and getting answers.
Suffice to say, it's not going to happen in the future. I think we all agree with you.
Exactly.
Okay, I had one more question on page 13, please. The last one, and we just weren't sure about this, was 19,100 for the lighting, and then 17,485 for the electrical. Just for clarification, are those combined, or is the 17,000 a part of the 19,000?
I think that they're separate, but I don't know if Steve is here and can help to speak to that.
Yeah, Steve wasn't sure, so yeah.
I really need to look into it because that's not correct.
Okay.
Email that to you, to
Yep.
BudCom and the board. Would that be okay?
Will do.
You okay with that, Chair Broderick?
Thank you, we'll get clarification on that.
Thank you.
Clarification and send it out.
Yeah,
And we'll adjust it in the slide as well before it's made public.
right, thank you.
Oh, Jim.
Michelle, a question about books. On page 3 of tonight's presentation, the FY19 budget request of $122,672 to cover all district programs. How does that relate to the budget proposal book, where it says pretty much under every school, the total cost of books? For example, that number appears on Bakey on page 3 of 19, but it appears under every section as a total for books of $181,722.
Thank you for asking that question. I think it can be a little confusing when we're looking at the accounts. I took this question to refer to the book line item across the district. In the printed document that you have, it identifies the book account for each location, but in the pivot table documents that were shared, information was provided that showed by account number or type of expense across the district. So I was assuming that question came from looking at 100% of the expenses for books. Now, you'll see in the different locations that the Bakey is a great example. There were significant cuts made to the budget for this year. They were below what was requested initially.
So,
Well, I was going to,
I'll wait.
Okay. In the response, you can see that 42,000 was cut from the initial request.
right,
So we reinstated funds to bring it up to the initial request from this past budget process and to what was really needed to meet student needs. I'm not quite sure if I'm answering your question clearly enough.
well, if you're adding the 40, are you adding the 42 to get 122,672? Or are you adding the 42 to the 122,672?
No, the 122,672 is the total expense in the book line district-wide. So that takes into account Bakey, Memorial, middle school, high school, any other.
That's my question, because that differs from the total amount that's in the budget book, which is.
You won't find that total amount in this book, because this book doesn't total by the object type. You'd have to go to every single location and add them all up.
If you look in that book, on page 3, say of 19, under Bakey,
Yeah,
the second amount down from the top,
yep,
and it says, quantity unit price, 181,722.11 with an E. That I got from reading this book is the total of all these sub-amounts. Because it carries through on each page, each of the schools. That number appears over and over again.
that's for, the way the information gets in the system is there are several entry methodologies, if you will. That particular entry totaled 181. There were other entries. You would literally have to go to every single place that account number, if you look at the account number, it is
10, 1100.
yeah, so, and then the next group of accounts, 564300, actually, we're looking at online access fees on that one, sorry.
Yeah, that's the one above it.
It's 56400, right?
Right, 56400, sorry. You would have to go through every page in here, find every account number with 56400 and add them up to get to the 122. Alternatively, you can go to the pivot table report that does that and click on that object number and it will drill down and will show you every single place that account number appears and how the 122,000 was arrived at.
So there's a difference of almost $60,000 between the 181.7 and the 122.6.
I think the 181.7 is online subscriptions.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, I started looking at that too, and I was getting confused with the object numbers.
Total for books is $60,261.
For that one particular entry. That one entry is split over several different locations, but then there are other entries as well.
Could I just interject that I think that this is a very specific technical question?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go over it some other time.
I'd be happy to have you meet with Michelle, and then if we need to share an answer out with the group, we could do that. But there's 30 more slides left, 33. Can I just throw one other thing too? This is exactly what Michelle and I have been up against for the last few months. This is what it's like to solve. We go to look for something that we think should take 20 minutes. It's amazing. And that's why we're going to reorganize all of this and do budgeting in a completely different way in the district. So I'll talk about that more later, but I want you to know that this process will not look even remotely the same next year. I've contacted some business managers that I've worked with in Maine. Michelle and I have talked, you've seen the pivot tables that she created. The pivot table that she created is what I'm used to, that type of budgeting. So I know everyone has had frustrations and it's been tough. It certainly has not been easy this month for us, but we recognize that sometimes it's just confusing just to answer a simple question. That's all I'm saying, okay? And we want to streamline that. Corey?
Just do true program-based budgeting, please, for us all. On lucky page number 13, apparently, I myself want to have clarity, understand, walking away from this meeting, what we're looking to get answered, because the CIP book that we actually approved as a school board last October 19th, 2016, was for 2000.
I think you're editorializing, and we decided not to do that.
No, I'm not, Annie. I'm actually asking a question here because it was from 2018 to 2022, but I see where there's confusion in the question. I want to know myself so I can do the homework, because I'm trying to figure out, I've been seeing you look here, how much is Frank Marinance or whatever pronounced architect spent?
Right.
So what is the exact ask is what I want to know.
I think that what we decided is to send the question to Michelle so that she can research it and give us all the answer.
Question?
The question on how much was spent with Frank Marinese to develop the CIP.
Okay, that's it.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
All right, so I'm on page 16. Is everyone there?
Yes.
That's fine.
Here we go, Joe.
Then you're trying to find it.
I always skip a few pages. I think you know.
All right, page 16, the question is regular education salaries, middle and high school, $3,902,233.76. Suggested revised number, $3,582,233.76, which is a reduction of $320,000. The 8.5 FT staff adjustment is shown in presentation for the proposed FY19, assuming it is from middle school and high school staff, seems an underestimate. This number could be increased to 16.5. Why? The 7 FT through the high school class schedule reorganization of smaller classes, plus 6 FT All high school students take at least one VLAX course, plus 3.5 FT. The top third of the high school cohort takes more than one additional VLAX course. Enhanced use of VLAX, which is the Virtual Learning Academy Charter School, is recommended in the 5-year strategic plan, 2016 to 2021, pages 29 through 30, indicate that districts should move to increase use of VLAX by SRHS students in 16-17, by Sanborn Middle School learners in 17-18, and encourage all students to enroll in at least one VLAX course while in high school in FY 18-19. The admin proposed adjustments of 8.5 FT times 80,000 includes salary and benefits for full-time is $680,000. Further adjustment, 16.5 FT times 80,000 is 1.32 million. The net difference is 640,000. Suggest 50%, 320K be retained to fund increased steps for continuing staff and for necessary incentives to recruit staff in the critical shortage areas. So the answer to this is, this question is more of a proposal that would need to be discussed by the board and the community, as it would dramatically alter the course of offerings and programming at Sanborn Regional High School. Similarly, the suggestion to change steps would affect the current collective bargaining agreements in place. It is important to note that the master schedule at the high school was completely recreated 4 years ago in an effort to address 3 shortcomings that were identified in the previous block schedule. The shortcomings were: all classes needed to be offered year-long, students needed access to dayable, flexible learning periods, the ideal class period length was set at 60 minutes, and it was requested that a schedule be developed that maximizes teacher collaboration time by allowing for regular common planning time for teacher teams. The current schedule meets all of these above qualifiers, and the answer goes on page 17. Additional considerations for proposals that support local courses and classes with VLAX, the Virtual Learning Academy Charter School, courses and classes. Number 1, VLAX was established by law as a public charter school predicated on school choice. Parents and students must choose to enroll in a VLAX program and cannot be compelled to enroll. Any local policy that mandates VLAX enrollment would violate the choice aspects of the law. Each school is required to meet the minimum approval standards. Sorry about the numbering there. Number 2, which is also number 1, number 2. Each school is required to meet minimum approval standards as established by the New Hampshire Department of Education and codified by the legislature. These standards must be met locally and are supplemented by programs like VLAX and not supplanted by them. While VLAX can expand to meet most demands, from a capacity perspective, there can be a lag in hiring staff when enrollment fluctuates rapidly. This lag can result in waiting lists for courses. This year, VLAX expanded by 9%, which resulted in waiting lists for courses. There's another question that ties to this one, so I'm going to just keep going for a second, and then I'll just take questions on the whole thing. Page 18. We would like an update on the exact number of middle school and high school students currently taking one or more VLAX Virtual Learning Academy Charter School courses. We'd like an estimate of the number of middle school and high school students expected to enroll in VLAX in FY19, both number of students and also number of VLAX courses each student plans to take, if desired, more than one VLAX course. It's difficult to anticipate how many students will take advantage of VLAX extended learning opportunity, as there are a number of reasons students elect to take a course this way. That being said, here is a summary of how many students took advantage of a VLAX class in the last 2 school years. In 2015-16 at the middle school, 3 students attempted and completed 3 classes. In 2015-16, 150 students took at least 1 class, 222 classes were attempted, and 85 were completed. In 2016-17, 1 at the middle school. In 2016-17 at the high school, 98 students took at least 1 class, 159 classes were attempted, and 93 classes were completed. 1 at the middle school in 2017-18, and this year we have 51 students enrolled in 57 courses thus far this year. I think that would cover kind of like the whole gamut of those 3 slides. Questions?
Any thoughts why the number of attempts versus the number of completions?
Online learning isn't for everyone. Even, these are high school kids. They're not adults or college kids. They require still a significant amount of hand-holding to get through a class, particularly in grades 9 and 10. Mr. Stack, did I answer that?
Yeah, I mean, we also have a number of kids that will start out saying they want to try a VLAX class, and they may start 1 or 2 and then realize those aren't a good fit for them, and so they drop them and replace them with something else, or they just realize that online learning is really not something that fits their style. So,
Michael, you did a little bit of homework on this. Can you talk about, there was a little bit of a discrepancy in VLAX numbers and our numbers, and so we did some research on that, and I wanted Mr. Tamel to talk about that.
The first thing I would comment is to say that it was stated in the strategic plan that we would love to encourage students at the high school to take at least one VLAX course. And that is more of a programmatic issue than a budget issue. For those of you who have children in college or will have children in college or who've had students in college, you know that there is typically now in a university experience an expectation of an online learning component. Some of the courses that our students take in traditional brick and mortar colleges and universities have online courses. And we feel like it's setting students up to be successful in these brick and mortar institutions if they've experienced online learning before they get there. So, but that's a programmatic issue, and we want to encourage that in our students. But as Mr. Ambrose stated, we cannot compel students to do that. So we can encourage them, we can set them up for success. We have done lots of things in our buildings. For example, at the high school, we have an online learning lab where we have an adult who monitors progress and assists students. I want to address a couple other issues that Mr. Stack could have told you regarding why some students are successful and why others are not. It can be anything from a technology issue at home. So we've had students who enroll in a VLAX course, and in order to enroll in a VLAX course, you have to have a virtual meeting between the guidance counselor or teacher at VLAX, mom or dad, and the student. Oftentimes they do this by telephone. They can also do it by video conferencing. They go through the ground rules and what the minimum expectations are. And so there are some minimum expectations for technology in the home. You have to have a computer that's fast enough to run the videos that they'll send. You have to have an internet connection that's reliable and allows for video feeds back and forth with the teacher, et cetera. So we've had students who've had that level of technology at home, and then something happens. Mom or dad loses a job, they can no longer afford the internet, or their computer breaks and they can't get it replaced. We've actually had students who we've had to try to get them up and running. That has been eased with the one-to-one initiative now with Chromebooks. So some of these numbers in the past could have really been a technology issue that now has been resolved because every student has a Chromebook in their hands. With regard to success rate, here's an interesting fact. Even VLAX acknowledges that a significant proportion of students will either struggle or not be successful altogether in their courses. And they actually have a 28-day grace period. So when you enroll in a VLAX course, they don't actually start to count your enrollment towards success or completion until day 29. Because they recognize in day 28, if you're making progress and you haven't encountered any of those issues, it's likely that you will succeed. So even in their statistics, they report a 90% completion rate, but they only count after that 28-day grace period.
Is there any, like you mentioned, a lab? How does that support the student that maybe is taking their first VLAX course in some of these issues of how to schedule their time, how to handle the technology, and a lot of other things that you mentioned that could come up? Is there any support for that?
There is. In fact, so as part of this online lab, students can take VLAX on their own. So they can enroll in a VLAX course and do it 100% at home. But they can also have it built into their schedule here at the high school, where instead of going to a traditional class, they go to the online lab and actually complete their VLAX course here while they're at school. If that happens, they have the access to an adult in the room who can assist them if they run into some sort of a roadblock.
Could I suggest that it's not on the budget, though. Could we kind of stick to the budget things, and you guys can take that up in school board?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
May I continue?
Please.
You want the next slide? All right.
To do with the budget?
Only answer the questions that come forward. All right, so the next one is 5-year strategic plan, 2016 to 2021, lists the following items for FY 18-19. I'm not going to read them all. None of them are funded. With that level of $1.1 million decrease, would you like me to read them all?
No.
Okay, all right. So everyone can read the slide.
I like your thinking.
Page 20. Master schedule detail current FY. The Sanborn Regional High School master schedule is 8 periods on a 6-day rotation and is based on student needs, graduation requirements, staffing availability, and certification. I want to be clear. Student needs means the courses that they choose to take. And, there are student needs. It also means special education, regular ed, but the reality is that at a high school, students sign up for courses. So I guess I just wanted to make sure that student needs would be defined as course selection or course. Some classes might run 1 year in 2 sections and 1 section in another year. It just depends on the student's desire to take those courses. Course selection does not occur until later in the year, and this is an area that we are continuing to evaluate. Slide 18 also addresses this question. What is the student capacity in each school? Okay, let me tell you something. This was tricky. This is a classic example of something that I thought that we would just have on some piece of paper somewhere or in a computer hard drive, and we had to really research this. So these are, as I said, capacity is not necessarily reflective of class size or best practice. So if you're asking me today, the building aid report filed with the Department of Education is 575 for Bakey. I'm not telling you today, as the superintendent of schools, that I would be comfortable putting 575 students in the Bakey school. I'm telling you that for fire code capacity, that's what's on the state report, right? Having 27 kindergartners in a classroom just because it has the square footage isn't necessarily best practice in education. So we put the numbers here for you. The high school has about 1,200 to 1,400. The middle school has 416. And Memorial has 350 and Bakey has 575. But we're going to talk about that more in a minute when we talk about the proposed NESDEC study. This would be part of a bigger process that I have mentioned to the school board, but maybe is not as much to the BudCom, so I'll talk about it in just a minute, okay? Just so you know, we're going deeper on this. We got what we could for today in a week from the state, but Michelle is looking into this, and I do want to know more information about operating size versus capacity. So there's the capacity of the building, and then there's the regular daily operational size of the building. We think that this is the capacity numbers, but we need to double check that, and that needs to be done through looking at architects, talking about different additions. So like if you look at the Bakey school, there's one part and then the new part, and I don't really feel comfortable with this, but I felt like we should give you what was on file at the state because that's what's on file at the state. How many students left the district in the high school this year? Where did they go? How many returned? And last year, we were given a 2-year report and want an update. Please let us know if you need the report from last year. Thanks for offering. Withdrawals are listed on the table below. 1 student returned this year. So we had 19 students that went to a different public school due to a family move. And to Sandra's note earlier, we had an unusual bump in 9th grade. So you can see that on this chart. And the private school, we had 14, 6 Fremont students and 8 Sanborn students. Again, it was odd, it was in that 9th grade group because we only had 2 in 10, 11, and 12. And then charter school, we had 7 in 9, 10, 11, and 12 for a total of 19 in 10, 11, and 12. And a total of 24 in 9th grade. So it was just an interesting, odd year. After 8/28, we had 7 go due to a family move, and homeschool/correspondence school 1 for a total of 8. Now, I just want to be clear, we had 1 student, the question was specific, returned. We had 1 student returned. We have had more students move in to offset these move-outs. I mean, having been a high school guidance counselor and a principal for a number of years, I don't see any concern in these numbers when you're talking about class sizes of 160 to 170. I would average 10% moving in or out. Just people move, you know, it's natural. Now, when I worked in the Lafayette School in Sanford, we had 50% move in and out by the end of the year. And that was a very different situation because of the poverty level in the community. But for our free and reduced lunch count, 18%, 10% would be very normal. I would even be comfortable with 15. So we're in pretty good shape on that front. Page 22.
Before you move on.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Cheryl.
You may not be able to answer this question, but I'm finding it hard to understand how these last 3 questions relate to the budget.
This is what we decided we wouldn't spend our time talking about. At our last meeting, you weren't here, 15 minutes of the administrator's time was spent discussing whether questions were appropriate or not. And what we all agreed to when we started was that we weren't going to editorialize on whether questions were appropriate or not. We're simply going to get our answers and allow them to go home.
So I don't know that this relates to the budget, and so I should ask
I'm keeping
in
track of
another
every single
question.
question that's not related. We can compare notes.
I am also.
Okay, may I go on? Thank you, Cheryl. I just want to be clear that the administration isn't going to get into the politics of what is or isn't about the budget. We answer the questions that are asked of us.
Thank you.
I'm not going to tell people what not to ask. That's up to you as a committee. Okay, we're going to answer the questions per statute. Okay, yeah, no problem. I just want to say, though, that we felt like we're compelled to answer because we were asked.
Okay, thank you.
For all lease to purchase agreements in place, what is the current status, years remaining, cost per year in lease, and the estimate of the life of the item? Lease purchase agreements currently in place. Memorial School, there's a solar hot air array. I'm not going to read all of this. You can read the details. The air source heat pumps and recovery units, and at the high school, there's a solar air thermal power purchasing agreement. The annual payment on that one is $33,500, and the term remaining is 4 years. The last payment is due in 2022. Next question is, what is the return on investment for the investment over 5 years where the direct digital controls are installed? And this did kind of come from last week, 2 weeks ago. Steve's working on that. Mr. Riley is working very hard to find that out. He doesn't know at this date, or unless you found out today. He did not. So he met with the vendor, he's working on it, and we'll get that information to you, as we do recognize that there's a potential immediate cost savings to installing those heat sensors. So I certainly would like more information myself about that item. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Page 23, school psychologist. This has been on the wish list for several years. First question was, what will it take to make this happen? What impact will this have to the budget? And what law requires a school psychologist? We need to hire an administrator who can handle individual education plan team meetings and behavior consultation, response to intervention plans, and out-of-district placements and psychological evaluations. This is not a comprehensive list. A job description will need to be created. This is a role, if the role is administrative in nature, the psychologist can move quickly when students are in crisis. So what's essentially occurred is that if we hire a teacher-level school psychologist, our collective bargaining agreement does not cover all the roles and responsibilities of that person. It also does not give us hardly any flexibility in the hiring process for the salary. And the hard part about that is that school psychologists are a doctoral level position, and we can't get one. So we're paying for contracted services, because if you read below here, the law says you have to have a school psych to do the majority of evaluations at IEP meetings. That's individual education plan meetings. So it's really important to understand that we're paying a fortune for these services, and we have to pay them hourly. So if we have a crisis go on, we have to pay them for that week. Whereas if we had someone in an administrative role, what's on the books might only be $4,000 or $5,000 less than what we're currently paying for contracted services, but there's a dramatic increase in the flexibility to work as needed when you're a regular employee of the district. So, you know, we're really working hard on this, but the reality is that it has little impact to the budget. The cost of contracting the services is high, and so having an administrator may save money and give the district more flexibility. Students with disabilities are required to have evaluations completed to determine the initial eligibility for special education services, or, as I think Sandra said earlier, for their triennial reviews. So this is all required by law, so it's not flexible. If we don't have a school psych, we're paying by the hour. I don't know how else to put that one. So we're trying really hard to figure that out, because we had a great school psych last year that we wanted to hire, and they literally just said no way for the salary. Right? And the reality is that I would like to see someone at that level for school psych to provide consultation and have some oversight. When they say to a teacher, this is the behavior plan that we're going to use, or they're working with an administrator, they can say to them, this is what we're doing. You know, there's an authority to the position that needs to be applied.
Tom?
Yeah.
What salary would a school psychologist get? What is the gap between what we have budgeted for it and what you'd need?
Jody and I talked at length, and Jody, tell me if I'm wrong, but we thought that the salary would be between $65,000 and $80,000, depending on their certifications and experience, plus benefits, and that could be variable anywhere from $16,000 to $25,000.
So how much is
Michelle? Is that pretty close? Yep.
So how much is budgeted for that?
Nothing. Oh no, we have the money budgeted for where's Jody? We have money budgeted for a staff member right now, right? Can you explain how that's budgeted? It's a little tricky and it's on another slide, but I'll have her.
Okay.
So just to go back to the average cost for a second. So last year when we were looking at hiring our own employee, the individual that we tried to offer the position to was actually very insulted by what we were offering them. And they said, and they were new to the job. They would have been on a learning curve to some extent, but they demonstrated a lot of confidence within their interview sessions. At a minimum, they were already making $65,000 without benefits, and they were new, fresh to the field. So that's where we kind of came up with the $65,000 to $80,000. Right now, all the money for next year is in the other professional services line for contract services. Because we can't predict what's going to be happening in the future, and we had to budget for the maximum of what it would cost us to do contracted services.
So in that line, the other professional line, I don't have the pivot table in front of me right now.
It actually says psychological services. I have to look at the
Yeah. Okay, but it would be, I would assume 120,000 would have to be in there in order to pay 80 plus benefits for a school psychologist. Is that at least the amount that's?
If you're looking at, if we were to budget in the employee lines, you would be looking at about $120,000. So an $80,000 salary comes out to about $121,000 with salaries included.
Okay, and that much is in that line. You're currently spending $121,000 for the contracted services, or would there need to be more?
So contracted right now, there's about $230,000.
Okay.
Because it's for 3 individuals for a total of 9 days. Each of those 3 individuals has a different rate. So we have one psychologist that makes one rate, another psychologist who makes a different rate based upon their experience with the company that we contract out through. So that's the total. When I calculated this out, I basically took the lowest amount and said, okay, if we were to make that person who only works 4 days a week, if we said they worked about 100, or if we said they worked about 5 days a week, what would that look like? That was about $114,000, $115,000 just for their salary, recognizing that that amount will go up next year anyway, but I took what we're currently paying for the cheapest psychologist through the contract.
Okay.
So do we need a combination of a school psychologist and then some contracted services to meet all the needs in all the buildings?
So if we were to get rid of contracted services entirely, we would need to hire 2 full-time psychologists. Okay. The proposal that we're looking at right now is to hire 1 full-time psychologist as an administrator. That gives us, again, more flexibility. I would be nervous if we were to say that we were going to hire 2 full psychologists brand new to the district, get rid of all of our contracted services, and then things don't go well with one or both of those new psychologists that we hired. Not to mention that one of our psychologists was recognized as Psychologist of the Year for the state. And my understanding has just been recognized at the national level as well, has won that honor. I would not want to lose that professionalism of that individual, and they're only here 1 day a week or as needed anyway.
So really what I told Jody was to talk about balance. If we could, there are 2 ways that districts deal with this problem. They hire a psychologist as an administrator, or they have, when we open the collective bargaining agreement to negotiate, they set up a pay structure that's separate for school psychologists under the collective bargaining
I think
agreement.
that would be ideal.
It would be, yes, it just takes longer. And when every dollar counts, we're trying it would be ideal in one way, but I still like the piece about the administrative component where the psychologist can say to somebody, as an administrator, this is the plan we're going with. Do you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes there can be, with behavioral problems in particular, some resistance to the process that needs to be put in place to collect the information to accurately find out whether or not the student has an emotional disturbance. I'm struggling with this a little bit, which way would be the best way to go, but I think that ultimately the bottom line is that it's costing us a lot and we have limited flexibility. So one way or the other, we should solve the problem. I'm sorry it's such a complex answer, but it is a very complicated question.
Well, from a budget standpoint, it sounds like you have enough in the budget to be able to hire the psychologist and retain contracted services. Is that true, or
Yes.
is it? Okay, thank you.
Yes, if the board affords us the flexibility to make it an administrative position.
Okay.
Which I didn't love saying, by the way. It's not the goal here. It's just the needs of this particular position.
Thank you.
This is the line in the original budget presentation where you had listed as an $87,000 reduction when it was just a transfers from one item to another.
Yeah, it's not a reduction. We made that clear. Yep, it is. Yes, thank you.
Just making sure that that's been.
Yes, in one area it reduced, in another area it went up. And it's tricky when that happens in a budget to make it clear and transparent. Okay. Technology. How many switches in total in the district? What's the cost of new versus opposed to a rebuild switch? You replaced all at the high school with a 1-year warranty. How many extras do you have for how many switches? I did bring this up again because it's a follow-up question to 2 weeks ago, and we felt like it just needed to just to give the facts of this. The district has 55 switches total. A used switch is approximately half the cost of a new switch, depending on the model. The switches at the middle school have all recently been replaced. We currently have 6 spares to cover multiple different new model numbers. Dell has 4 different series of switches with 8 models, and each has a specific use. We are requesting to standardize to 1 series of switch. By keeping 1 spare per model, it eliminates the need to purchase extended warranties. So the budget impact on this is, what Bob's saying is, if we added $30,000 to the budget to fix switches, he can do it at a very inexpensive, about half as much as it would cost if he bought them all brand new, because he has negotiated a deal with someone to get used switches that he feels comfortable with. Mr. Mason.
Is this the last technology switch question in this listing?
I can't remember, but I believe so.
So I kind of asked a question that didn't really make the whole listing. Has this district considered, instead of going ahead and doing a one-time purchase, which has a 30,000 plus bump, a 5-year lease? So ultimately, we go ahead and put a $10,000 lease line item in there for infrastructure. So we're building in a contingency plan and building in a, basically a replacement plan. So we can get new equipment at the same cost, if not less, and yet we won't be hitting the taxpayer.
I do think that we have discussed that at a preliminary level, at the administrative team level. We haven't made any decisions about it yet because we just haven't had enough time to process it. I would say that is very worth exploring. That's just my opinion as the superintendent. I think that leasing has a lot of benefits, but we would want to, it's a perfect example of what Mr. Doggett said, which was getting it out to bid, right? If we're going to do leasing for technology, that would need to be a real bid. In my mind, I would want real sealed bids, open publicly, the whole nine yards, so to speak. Having said that, we haven't planned for it yet, but it goes along the lines of, if you think about contingency or reserve accounts, when those are set up right, they prevent the bumps for the taxpayer on some level.
Exactly.
Because they move from year to year. They go up and down some, but they prevent having big bumps, such as when the roof had to be suddenly replaced at the middle school. There's money there for that. So it really helps. And what Corey's proposing, Mr. Mason is saying, is exactly a process by which that would be done. But to answer his question, no, not for today. But yes, it would be worth exploring. Could we discuss that at the board meeting next week, Mr. Broderick? Yeah. That'd be helpful.
Well, I think before we discuss it, we need you and Bob Ficker perhaps to give us a whole proposal rather than,
thank you.
You know.
So I think the short answer is, for now, if we funded these switches, it would make a big difference, but I think we should explore this.
Yeah, capital reserve accounts stabilize or they level the butt instead of having these peaks and valleys.
Yes, that's the hope. For the past fiscal year, please provide a list of all persons or entities that receive motor vehicle use payments or stipends and the amount paid to each. So we did put a chart in slide 28. Most employees are eligible for travel reimbursements under the collective bargaining agreements. Due to the way the budget was coded in the past, it is very, very difficult to compile these total figures. In order to provide this level of detailed information, we would have to hire a staff member to audit these records. I want to tell you that I personally went to find out the answer to this question. And I had our accounts payable person and our, I'm sorry, what is Marie's technical title? Accounting. The person who handles our accounting walk me through the process to do one. I was a little bit shocked and baffled at how complex it was to just go get, what I asked for when I first walked out of my office is, can you just photocopy me all of the different, we sign a form, some of us, to get mileage reimbursement. Can you just photocopy all of those for me? And the response was, no, we can't. And I said, why? They exist in 6 different spots. I'm like, what do you mean they exist in 6 different spots? Well, it turns out that people can apply for travel or mileage reimbursement through their learning plan, which is the system that we use to track their state certifications. So there's all of those printouts. And then there's travel for special education, which is housed in a separate area. Then there's travel for regular education. I just want everyone to know I am happy to give you this information, but if you want it now, we've got to hire someone to come in and audit our records and give it to you. We don't have the manpower to photocopy all of that. It would be a huge book of paper for every single different time that somebody gets mileage reimbursements. So I'll take questions on this one in a minute, but I want to go on to we are definitely looking at streamlining this. There's one thing that I want to see is that, I always hate saying this, my friend Dr. Ross Green always says when you have a problem you want to declump it, and I always think of cat litter. But it's like well anyway, so when he says to declump it, I want to see clear lines in our budget that are for automobile reimbursement, air flights, conferences. I mean, this shouldn't be this hard to figure out, okay? I want to be honest about it. It's frustrating for us too. But we're not going to lie to you. We're going to tell you we don't know. We have to pull it together. There are some places that we can see travel, but it's not just cars. So where we see travel, it's airplanes, some of it's grant funded. So Mr. Stack presented at the INACOL conference this fall. He flew, but they paid for him to go there. Right? He was a presenter at the conference, so that was no cost to the district. I just want to get a clear handle on it before I start throwing out numbers and talking about what the impacts are. Having said that, let me just keep going, and I'll take questions on that one in 2-3 more slides, okay? Because when we look at the chart. All right, pre-kindergarten tuition students, please provide actual tuition costs for non-SPED students. Please analyze transportation options for PK tuition students. I'm not going to read all of this. Jody said it was roughly $165 a month or $1,650 per year. The reality is that if we provide transportation, we have to just provide transportation. So it's tricky, because if we provide transportation for the regular ed kids, if we're one kid over on the size of the bus, we need another bus. right? It would be very complex and difficult to calculate how to have a bus fee that would cover everything. So here's the scenario. You get this bus full of little kids that are riding, and then this one mom wants their kid to go, but that pushes the whole situation over to have to hire another bus. So does that kid just pay the $16 and then we pick up the next bus? Or do we include that in the cost for our transportation? So when Jody and I talked about this, we really are looking at bus routes as part of the bigger picture. And I just want you all to know, whatever we can do to give our pre-K kids whatever options we can, I am all about that, because the research is clear that if we help kids prior to the end of third grade, they are way more likely to succeed as older students. So I'm totally sold on working with more pre-K kids. I just wouldn't know how to charge someone for bus fees, right? And be fair and equitable about it. Jody, did I get that? We've talked a lot about this. Is that the general summary?
Yeah, I would agree.
Is there anything you want to share? Okay, so you can read the information here. Right now, you know, we are supposed to have 50% regular ed and 50% special ed, and we really want to encourage getting some of our regular ed kids here. You're going to hear a lot about early elementary from me the next couple of years, because I recognize that once you learn how to read, you have to read to learn, right? So fourth grade, you're reading to learn. You're learning the content through reading. You can help these little kids out really early. It makes the whole system more effective. Okay? Page 26, health insurance waivers. What is the amount paid?
We have 2 questions.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Correct me if I'm wrong, your scenario about if a parent decides they want to win the lottery and put their child on the bus, we don't supply transportation to them.
Right. That question was, could we supply transportation to them? And I was saying that I would love to, but I wouldn't want to charge them for it.
Oh, okay.
If we're going to provide it, I think we should provide it uniformly.
We concur,
Yes. No, I'm glad you asked.
You left that little bit out.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep us moving. Thank you. Mr. Doggett, I think it's important to recognize that I appreciate your comment, but also that I just want, if we can get kids into school earlier, it really makes a big difference. You know, so thanks for bringing that up.
Clarification on the numbers, the last paragraph, currently Bakey, AM 11, is that 11 students, special ed and non, or is that?
Combined total.
That is combined, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cheryl, I'd like to see that go way up. So we'll be working on that one.
Can't talk about that tonight.
Nope. Keep going. That's a programming one. Thank you. All right. Health insurance. So we have 42.5 employees totaling $144,900 that receive in Unit 1. Those are the folks that do not take our health insurance and get a waiver. 26 employees for $92,700 in Unit 2. Unit 3 has 4.10. I asked, how can that be? Well, there's part 0.8, 0.6. It's kind of part-time positions and whatnot. And it was $14,760. In Unit 4, we have 4 employees that do not take health insurance. It's $14,400, and I do not as well, which is $6,000. So I think it's so important to recognize that the total cost for employees who do not take benefits is $272,760. The cost if these staff members selected coverage as a single plan would be $813,000 on and on dollars. Cost if these staff members selected coverage as a full family plan would be over $2,227,616.64. So we are getting a great deal out of this.
Good.
Okay, number 26, page 27. So this gets back in it. Now we're back into the automobile travel questions. So it asked us to provide a copy of all contracts, agreements, memos, and documents that require and/or obligate the district to pay for, reimburse, or pay a stipend to any person or entity in the use of a motor vehicle. I gave you what's pertinent that we have readily available, which was there's administrator salaries policies. Hey, Michael, we got to move that over. I don't know what happened. There are 2 different policies that obligate us to do that, and we have the SREA support staff contract and the professional staff contract. And you can see on the next page, I combined the cell phone and the travel stipends. And you can see the number of staff. We have 3 that have a $240 cell phone stipend. The total annual cost is $720, which is on the tax rate 0.00058 for Kingston and 0.00065 for Newton. The number of staff, 4 at $360 each. The annual cost is $1440. And it's again 0.00116 and 0.00130. We have 20 people who receive $600. It's a total of $12,000. It's 0.00969 and 0.01086. And then if you look at the travel stipends, it comes out to be a total of $23,400, and it is 0.0189 and 0.021 and change. So important to recognize that the number of hours that people spend driving around and doing things within the district, the cost of tracking the mileage alone would probably outstrip the cost to pay the stipends. So every time someone drives from the high school to the middle school, they have to fill out a form and get reimbursed. The cost of hiring someone to process all of that would equal easily $23,000. And the piece about these cell phones is, if they don't have cell phones required, I can't obligate them to call me. You would not believe the amount of time I spend on the cell phone at night and on weekends talking to administrators. That's expected of them as part of their employment. We polled 5 other districts and found that we were at least on average to low comparatively for mileage and cell phones. Mr. Mason.
I was just going to ask 2 questions. One is, what's the purpose of this question? And 2 is just what you just echoed, is if your administrative staff aren't receiving a stipend or for the cell phone, how are you going to require to talk to them? The classroom teacher, not to editorialize, but the classroom teacher has a phone in their classroom to call staff.
We're once again editorializing, and we agreed not to do that. So if we could just move on with the questions, that would be great. Thank you.
So, Jim, yes.
Just regarding the numbers for the PDAs, they're not from the PDAs, it's
Public display of affection.
why are they listed in the budget under substitute nurse salaries?
That would be a question for Michelle. That'd be bizarre.
Mr. Doggett, if you wouldn't mind formulating that question and sending it through Annie to me with referencing the page that you're looking at, I'll be happy to review that and respond. Yeah, I'm not.
Sounds like an error.
Yeah, I'm not.
Could be. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be happy to look into that for you.
Thank you. Well, at least you got it all on a nice, neat chart there. It's easy to see. Page 29, please provide a list of all items, goods, supplies, and services that were put out to bid in the last fiscal year. A list of all rewarded bids. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. A list of all awarded bids to whom made and the amount in the prior and current year. So you can see all the figures there. We had the freshman Chromebooks. The bid was awarded to the lowest vendor, CDW. I don't know if that's actually an acronym, Charlton, so I didn't change it because we asked Bob to take those out. I assume that's their name, CDW. 47300. And Microsoft licensing, they give you everything you asked for there, I think. Do you have any questions about that one?
That looks good.
If I could, I would like to just add a clarifying note to this particular question and our response. There's a formal process to a bid, and I wasn't 100% sure if the question was asking which items were priced with a formal bid versus which items were priced with competitive pricing, and there's a difference. So there were many other things that the district has sought out competitive pricing. It's a little bit of a challenge for me to gather them because I wasn't here at the time that this was done, but there are others that aren't listed, but they weren't bids. They were requests for proposals, or maybe a particular situation where the number of vendors that were really available was limited, and so phone calls were made to them to discuss what the needs were. So I don't want the response to this to imply that these are the only vendors where competitive pricing was sought out.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, what would the $25,000 cut from your original professional development request go to support? What do we lose with $75,000 in PD versus $100,000? What do you propose $75,000 in professional development be directed towards? So I just want to be clear that we went over that a lot last time, but I'll try to help with a little bit more with the $25,000. So the purpose of the professional development money, and I want to also remind everyone that we made cuts to fund that money, right? Like, we're not asking to add $100,000 in PD to the budget or $75,000. We're asking to reallocate $75,000 to professional development. We cut $25,000 because it brought us over a zero year-to-year budget, right? That's why the budget came out at $3,500 less. The $25,000, my goal is to say to teachers, I want you to review your students' work, take a look at where they're doing well, take a look at what it needs improvement, try some things to make improvements, and then tell us what you need help with to improve your teaching. And then we'll use this money to figure that out. So the goal is to work with teachers to figure out their needs and meet those needs. So it's difficult. I would say literacy and math would be the first two places that we would start. Our strategic plan definitely has a focus on pre-K 3, and I really want to make sure that we start working with the pre-K 3 teachers to support them, because it's such a critical time in children's lives. And certainly we've all recognized that the SAT scores at the high school and our math program, we want to provide support for those teachers if they're willing to work hard to do something about it. So my hope would be that we can pay teachers to analyze data, to make decisions about instruction, and then get them whatever support they feel they need to move it forward. That would be my hope with this money. Other areas that I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see teachers have time to develop days either in the summer or on professional development days where they are sharing their best practices with each other. So there's nothing like hearing your neighbor talk about what they love to teach or the way they do things. We have some incredible teachers in this district. I want to provide a structure for them to share with one another what they're doing well and right. So it's really not a blanket purpose, but I love the question because it lets me talk about my favorite part. So.
We've been going for a couple of hours. Would anybody feel like you'd like to take a 5-minute break? Would that? Or would, huh?
Great idea.
All right, let's do it.
A real 5 minutes, though, not 15.
Yeah. Real 5 minutes.
Can you tell which school it is by that?
It's just going to be noisy on the.
Very well. If it's good, we did it. If it's bad, it's
Of course. I got big shoulders.
Good job.
Yes.
Is it the,
29, no, wait, are we on 30 or 20? I thought we were on.
We are on 30 now.
We are on 30, thank you. All right, what amount should be saved in the budget for reserves? Specifically, why should this be done? If part of the answer is for emergencies, please list such emergencies that could occur in a school district. What is the current status of all reserve funds in the district? Seems like it would be pretty simple to answer, but it was pretty complicated. First of all, reserve funds are designed to help to protect the taxpayers and the district from huge bumps in the road. So the goal is, it's almost like if you think about diabetes and blood sugar stabilization, if you keep everything level, then you're moving forward. It's when you have the big bumps that you have problems. So, you have to think about this in light of the fact that one out-of-district placement can easily cost $100,000 for a special ed student. And every time we have a kid move in, like we just did a few days ago, who needs a para dedicated to them, per their IEP that was developed at another district, that's $50,000 to $60,000, right? So $500,000 for special education is a bare minimum in my mind for this type of line. Now that can be developed over years. I am in no way proposing that we just create this level of accounts tomorrow. I'm saying that as we reduce budgets or put budgets forward, we should start building contingencies so that then we can go through the budget and do things like cut some of these lines really tight to what the actual expenditures have been for the last couple of years, because we have some place to go if there's a problem. I would say $700,000 in conferring with Michelle and others for regular education. That includes for situations such as extended teacher leave, unanticipated class size increases. that allows us to make strategic decisions about class sizes and get things a little bit closer to a comfortable class size, knowing that we have the room to hire a teacher should we have, like I said before, I had 20 kids move into first grade, right? When you have 20 students across 4 classrooms move into first grade, that is huge. So we had to hire a teacher that year and actually go to the board and ask for a teacher. Well, if you don't have contingencies for that, you can't do it. $800,000 for capital reserves. Examples include, but are not limited to, such as the middle school roofing situation that we faced, windows, doors, fuel, etc. And $200,000 for technology. That would include, and is not limited to, servers, switches, networks, things that can go wrong. I can't stress enough the importance of technology in a modern school district. It's the nervous system of the schools. If the technology goes down, we don't do business, folks. We really don't. It's just the way it is now. It's really challenging. If you ever want to see teachers get really, really angry, break the photocopier. Be amazed. I've never seen anything like it, especially at the elementary level. Reserves for several important issues to be resolved. Reserves allow for several important issues to be resolved. The budget can be clearly outlined because the reserves are explicit and transparent. So if we say we need to hire a teacher, we come to the school board and say we need to use the reserves to hire a teacher. Everyone knows what's going on, and it's public, and that is what I want for our organization in that regard. It provides the 4 to 5% recommended amount in a clearly defined location. So right now, at the end of each year, we looked over last year's budget, and we had, Michelle, I don't want to misquote, but roughly 3.5% that was left over at the end of the budget. I would like that money to be explicitly located so that we can just see it transparently. And so that covers the transparency. And then the most important is to create that stability to our organization so that we can make strategic decisions and move forward with the best interests of the students in mind. And that also really helps with tax rates. Yes.
And the status of any of these reserve funds?
That is coming up on another slide.
Okay. That's fine.
Let me see if we get there in a few minutes. If we don't, I'll come back to that one, okay?
Thank you.
Michelle, I think that's on another slide.
It is on another slide.
Yeah, okay. So we'll get to that in a minute. It's in here. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about SST for a minute. This question asks about SST. What are we budgeting for, and what happens? And so we did an analysis of 3 years here. And really the synopsis is that after doing some research on this, the team feels like 100 slots is perfectly fine for SST because some students are applying for programs and they just don't get accepted to them. So even if we had a slot to pay for it, we wouldn't be able to put them in it. And the status of the 10th graders is that SST is opening up to 10th graders for next year, correct?
Correct.
That is true, yeah.
So my question is, should we budget for some more slots for that, or do you still feel like we'll be okay?
No, I think we'll be okay for going into at least next year because I don't know that SST is prepared to handle a significant influx of 10th graders either. So they've led me to believe that they're still going to follow the same application process, which is really that they want to make sure that the year 2 students get their slots filled first because they're en route to getting the certification programs complete. And then once that's done, they start looking at other students.
Cheryl?
So currently 10th graders are not going to SST?
No, that's going to start next year.
So it's just
11 and 12.
11 and 12?
Yes.
Okay. Correct.
Which, by the way, if you haven't toured that place, it's amazing.
I have.
It is awesome. Right. Yes, Jim.
When I was on the board of directors for the SST told us how many slots we had.
Oh, really?
Versus us budgeting for, we would budget for 120, but the slots of SST are allotted in accordance with our average daily membership in the high school based on a state formula, because it also depends upon the state reimbursement to SST for student participation. So if we had 120 students that want to go, we're locked. We have 120 seats, period.
100. Yeah.
This is, I just want to clarify that what you're suggesting has to be before my time, because in the 12 years that I've been here, Mr. Doggett, that's not the case.
Right.
And maybe it was that way before, I can't speak to what it was like before that.
Well, I'm assuming that we are still being assigned seats according to our average daily membership in the collective that created SST.
We're going to move
that's
on
not-
to the questions if we could.
I can share some information with you, Mr. Doggett, as well, or the rest of the board, but that's not true anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question was, do we need more money for SST? Do we have enough seats budgeted for? What are the options? And the answer is, it looks like the enrollments have been because kids haven't been accepted to programs, not because we don't have enough budgeted. I think with opening this up to 10th grade this year, it will remain to be seen as to whether or not we might need to increase that budget some in the future. But if Mr. Stack is confident that the 100 seats is enough at this time, I feel confident with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick comment. That's not just SST that's opening up to 10th grade. That's CTEs or Community Technical Education Centers statewide.
Thank you.
Could you talk about the variation between the accepted first year and second year, and how those numbers relate to the 100, how the 100 seats relates to the second year?
I'm going to let the team that handles that daily do that so we get accurate information.
Yeah, I mean, we always have a lot of, I'm going to let Heidi chime in too. SST always has, this is across the board for all of their sending schools, a lot of kids who do a first year program who find it's just not a great fit for them and they don't want to go back and do the second year. Either they don't like the field that they were in. Some of them want to try a different year one program. Some of them go on and do some kind of an internship back here at their own school, or just any other multitude of reasons. So it's generally, every year it's about 60% year one, 40% year two. That's about the attrition rate on average, as long as I've been here, it's been about that.
So do we have 100 seats reserved for year two also?
We don't, it's not so much a reserved seating system. So, I mean, they build, just like we do when we're sort of getting ready for next year, we're building what we anticipate. So they're anticipating we're going to be sending about 100 kids. They know what the trends tend to be. They're setting up their staffing for that. So they built their budget around this target number that they're trying to reach. Now, obviously, if they get more than that for students and they can accommodate it, great. If they get fewer than that for students, then that's going to end up raising the tuition costs for all the sending schools. And that number fluctuates quite a bit. They have a whole kind of science to the process as they're going through, and they usually look at a 5+ year history when they're trying to make some of their projections.
So how do those 2 years?
Could we?
How do those 2 years relate to our budgeting?
Jim, excuse me, we're going to move on from budget, because we already got the answer to the question on, 100 students is enough, and we're going to stick to the budget. Okay? Thank you.
I suggest that the school board and others submit their questions to the school board chair and I about SST, and I might have some answers relative to retention rate and other things.
Great.
Okay.
The superintendent.
Number 32.
Yeah, superintendent, sorry.
That's
Them,
fine.
and he'll find me.
We're all excited about SST. It's just going to get bigger and better. So we'll keep talking about it, right? They're doing great things over there. Okay, so on slide 32, the question was how many students participate and what is the cost that students pay, and is that a portion of the $17,500 in the budget or in addition to that amount? There was an account number attached to this. Sorry, we didn't put it in the slide. I'll just answer the question. The request refers to the line covering the fees for NECC, the Northern Essex Community College Dual Enrollment Program. This includes tuition, AccuPlacer testing, and textbooks. Families are responsible for $250 towards these costs. This year, there are 22 students enrolled in the program, which consists of 2 classes, English Composition 1 and a college success seminar. We have to budget the full amount. Any money received is considered revenue and offsets the bottom line of the budget, not this line item. Yes, Cheryl?
Do students get college credit for these courses?
Yes. Okay. Is this $206, $212 just for substitute teachers? If not, break it down. Who exactly does this $27,160 cover? And in most companies, if someone is out a day or two, someone just covers for them. Considering a short work year for schools, this seems excessive. Please explain. The budget amount of $206,212 covers the following: $38,025.50 per school for regular ed substitute teachers, $425 per school for media services substitute teachers, $4,075 per school for special ed substitute teachers, $30,000 in salary corrections made in 17-18, and $1,500 per school for teachers for homebound instruction. The budget amount of $27,160 includes $6,790 per school for special education support staff substitutes. So that's for a kid who has an individual education plan and their para is out. They have to have a substitute for that. The substitute budget supports wages to pay for staff covering positions that cannot be vacant or covered concurrently by another staff member in a different position. For example, one staff member cannot be in a one-to-one role with two students at the same time. So to answer the question about business, it's not possible to not have subs. I mean, in fact, we need to have a conversation at the board level about substitutes and the dire need that we have for substitutes, as I talked about on the meeting on the 15th, because it's not working. We're really having trouble getting people to substitute, let alone having enough money to cover the needs. Yes, Mr. Doggett.
When you say $30,000 for salary corrections.
Yep.
What are you referring to?
We are referring to recent salary adjustments for a number of administrative positions and other positions to be determined throughout the rest of this year and into next year. So we put 3% in the budget across the board for all non-CBA staff, right? So we have 3% in the budget for CBA staff. I mean, for non-CBA. So we have 2 collective bargaining agreements. We put 3%, and then we put this $30,000 in the budget as a placeholder for additional salary corrections.
Okay, so it's not salary corrections, it's salary increases. I mean, salary corrections sounds like
there was a mistake.
Going up and some going down.
Sure, fair enough.
Just the language needs to be in plain English.
Okay. We can debate the semantics of corrections versus increases, but I'm not agreeing with you. I'm just acknowledging that you don't agree with the term.
Okay.
Yes, Cheryl.
So does the correction mean you're bringing the salary into what would be an average or
Yes.
for that in other districts?
Thank you. That is exactly what the terminology that was placed in there was for. Next, 33. There appears to be questions and confusions on whether or not this is funded or not in the budget. Why is it even in here if it's not funded on the budget, by the budget? What is it showing on the district amount column as $25,899 and not zero? So I just want to put this one to bed forever. We are not funding any additional funds for the hockey program. That's what this question's about again. We are not. And so the question was answered in the last meeting. See page 18 in the high school budget. If anyone's stuck on this, call Michelle directly. Okay? Or Vicky. I don't want to go through that one again. I felt bad about it because I didn't know about the vote last year, and so I kind of opened a can of worms at the last meeting. Sorry. All right, so the next one is question. What is this for? There's an account number attached to it. Resurfacing the gym floors. What gyms? The 2 gyms at the high school and the Swayze gym. What calls for this to be done? It needs to be done yearly for safety and maintenance. Question, the amount of the estimate. The Swayze gym estimate is $1,800, and the 2 gyms at the high school are $4,775. Will this work be put out to bid? No, we have tried multiple vendors and have found that the current one does the best job. Account number 5100, I won't read all that. In the past year's actual was a lot less than the $36,250 that was spent. Why is this going up over $16,000 this year? The answer is that the amount is not going up $16,000. It is the same amount that was budgeted last year. This is for substitute custodians that are called on an as-needed basis. The next question. Oh, sorry. You guys good on that one? I'm going too fast again. All right, this is this amount not covered in other travel and stipend expenses found throughout the budget? Specifically, who is being paid this that is not already covered otherwise or by stipend or budgeted elsewhere? Explain in detail where the travel is to that would amount to 6,730 miles. Okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that no one's saying that anyone's driving 6,730 miles. This is the amount for me, for conferences, at the amount of 3,500, but it's for travel and conference fees. So if I need to attend a conference, it includes driving, conference fees, and potential flying, right? So I just don't want anyone to think that I'm driving, I just wish I could drive 6,730 miles and get some great books on tape done. All right, so the next one is, again, we have the same request, same types of things. That same amount is for the business administrator to attend conferences. But again, it's not just driving mileage, it's conference fees and travel. Number 35.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Again, I didn't ask this question. You gotta fix this next year so people can really figure this out when they look at it. Obviously, it's continuing confusion.
I wouldn't agree that it's continuing confusion, but I hear your point. I'll take your feedback at any time.
Okay, maybe it will be my question.
I'd be happy to. What's your question, Mr. Swayze?
No, I don't have a question tonight.
Oh, good, okay.
I think, are you asking, are we going to simplify this next year?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Well,
he's a lawyer, so he doesn't ask him to simplify.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that we are required by RSA to answer your questions.
Yeah.
And these were the questions that were submitted.
Yeah.
The superintendent already touched on this, but the three of us have been in discussions about really looking at the whole accounting procedure and how it's done and what have you. We're not prepared yet to present anything to anyone, so that's why we haven't talked about it. But I guess the three of us can say we assure you things will be a little different next year. Is that a fair way to put it?
I think Mr. Ambrose has said that too.
Yeah.
That's a fair question, and I think it's
But
important.
based on what he's saying, his question, I think that's a way to answer it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I just want to make sure everyone understands that the part that won't be different is that we have to answer the questions that are asked. Do you know what I'm saying? The only thing that would be better is that we'll be a little quicker at getting some answers, but some answers require a tremendous amount of research if you want that level of detail. So the answer is yes, some parts will be different and a little clearer, but process-wise, we're kind of doing the steps that are required by the RSAs. All right, so recent school board meetings, including the November 1st presentation of I'm on number 35. Superintendent's proposed budget. Mr. Tamel and Mr. Ambrose have both referred to the district's combined 71% college matriculation rate for the class of 2017, 40% four-year and 31% two-year is one of many reasons to celebrate. Historical data from the New Hampshire Department of Education website shows that on average, SAU 17's college matriculation rate prior to 2017, a 10-year period dating back to 2006, note that no data was reported for 2010, was actually higher at 74%, 42% four-year and 32% two-year, 3% fewer of our most recent graduates attending college than in the preceding decade. Our students are participating less in both the two-year and four-year categories. Please explain how this downward trend is worthy of celebration. I just want to be clear that a percentage point could be half a kid, right? And to keep that steady, considering the challenges that the children today face, is a significant task. Right? Getting kids excited about learning and going to college today is infinitely harder than it was when I was in college or high school. We are up against unbelievable odds. Technology, drugs, Xboxes, PlayStations, parents who work 3 jobs, parents who don't really believe in school. So to keep those levels that steady is amazing. I just want you to hear that from me as the superintendent. I am absolutely floored at how hard this high school works to keep these kids excited about school and to get them to college. And 100% of our students have post-secondary plans. That is unbelievable. Right? Now, I'm not saying that it's perfect. And I think there's room to grow. And I would love to see us raise aspirations, but this question gets at the heart of our real problem that we face. Why? I'm not convinced that it's curriculum, and I'm not convinced that it's instruction. After all of these hours and hours of meeting with people and listening, I think that we have a major aspirations problem in our community. And if we don't come together as a community to serve these kids and help them, then we can't solve it. The community has to be united to do this. And so I just ask everyone to consider, if we want to raise it from 71% to 85 or 90%, how do we get kids excited about school? That's a big challenge, folks. We have to get parents excited about school. I had 5 open houses where people could have coffee with me. One at a specific request to have coffee at night. No one showed up. That tells me that academics aren't our problem, folks. They're a part of a problem. But I just wanted you to hear that. If we got 71% of kids going to a second year, 2-year or 4-year school, and 25% of our families have a bachelor's degree or higher, we're knocking it out of the park. I'm not saying that we shouldn't knock it even further. We should. But we're doing a great job. But we did answer the question, which is on the next page. So the answer is, below is a 10-year review of post-secondary statistics. On the following slide, the data is displayed visually. Of particular note are the bottom 2 rows, which represent the total percentage of students attending college, 2- and 4-year, for Sanborn in the state. The data shows that Sanborn has continually hovered at or near the state average, plus or minus a few percentage points. Efforts to conduct post-secondary planning for Sanborn students currently include Naviance, the increase of college-level classes, this dual enrollment piece that we talked about earlier. Yes, that is right on. Because if a kid takes a dual enrollment class and succeeds, they start to believe that they can do it, even if their family didn't go to college.
We have 44% of our students in the junior and senior class participating in these.
We're very excited about that.
I asked this question, and I would think that with kids taking dual enrollment classes, something that's available in recent history, we would see that trend kind of on the upswing when in fact the 10-year average has been lower than it was.
But again,
now than it was.
1 or 2 percentage points is a few students. It's not. It's still not. I would say 5% up or down is totally reasonable, right? I'm not. Well, anyway, about the budget, this is an educational philosophical conversation, but...
The second part of the question that didn't get transferred over, and it was in what expenditure items in the proposed 2019 budget are planned to address or improve this trend? And you did just reference the Naviance and the dual enrollment.
I thought we answered that.
You did answer it, but it didn't show up in the original question.
Oh, I don't know why.
No, it does. It's in there. Yep, it's under the chart. It's there. It's right underneath the chart. So what expenditure items in the proposed 2019 budget are planned to address this trend? We just answered both questions together.
We were just trying to,
the answer was that we're not going to do anything different. We're keeping level funding. We're going to continue to impress upon our Naviance work. We don't have any new initiatives planned to do that.
The other thing I would mention, if I could interject, you could have 2 schools that have 71% enrollment and post-secondary experiences, and have one school that's actually preparing students at a far better rate. And I think that that's what we referenced earlier when, just because I was called out by name on this question about celebrating the 71%, if I recall accurately, what I was celebrating was our second year persistence. So the number of students that we send to college who are successful, which is far higher than the New Hampshire ends the national average. In other words, our kids who are getting into college are succeeding at a higher rate in that second year persistence.
You can see some information on slide 37 as well. Mr. Stack loves these cool charts, and he's really good at them, so he provided you with a few different ways to look at the data and information. So what Mr. Stack wrote is that the present budget requests allow for the continuation of these services at the current level. No additional services. Slide 38, what courses are included in the category Tech Ed, and what kinds of equipment do they have that requires maintenance, and are these elective courses? So tech ed at the high school covers welding, wood shop, automotive, CAD, computer-aided drafting, and pre-engineering robotics. We have very expensive equipment in these areas. In the shops, this includes both power and hand tools. How many students are enrolled, and has this been relatively stable over the years, and how many instruments does the high school own? At SRHS, our band enrollment is currently 47 students, up from about 35 at this time last year. Our enrollment in this program is expected to climb in the coming years due to a large expansion of the band program at the elementary and middle school levels. There's a little click here, but we provided you with those documents so you didn't have to click anywhere. But when we posted on the web, we wanted folks to be able to find it. It's got the inventory of the high school-owned band instruments, and this document is maintained by our high school band director. The next one was, do purchases go out to bid? If not, do the schools collaborate with one dealer to possibly get a better deal if buying multiples? It depends on the purchase. We are exploring collaborating with Fremont to get better deals, and Michelle and I are talking every day about ways to create efficiencies in all areas, supplies, transportation, whatever we can to funnel more dollars back to the kids, because that's where we want them to be. Any questions on that page? I kind of whipped through those three, but just want to give you a chance to. Okay, page 39. Question, 25,000 says that it includes system support. What does that mean? And then a bunch of more information. I'll just read the answer. This is for local and long-distance charges for the high school phones. It also includes any phone system maintenance for the high school phones. As mentioned previously, and all of these requested amounts are based on previous 3 years' actual expenditures. The high school is a larger facility. The next question is, how many art classes are there in total, and are the same ones offered every year? Currently, SRHS offers art courses in the following areas: visual arts, drawing, painting, ceramic sculpture, digital media, photography, and mixed media. They're generally the same classes offered each year, and although some classes are added or retired based on student interest. Next question is, can and are needed supplies be bought with other schools to get a volume discount?
Same.
Can and are these combined with supplies needed by other schools and or athletics to get volume discounts? Again, we're researching that and hoping to create some efficiencies in those areas. Slide 40. Please identify all funds in the district and amounts in each, including all revolving funds. This is back, Annie, to the question about the accounts.
Yes.
Principal accounts are actually student activity accounts and are not a part of the budget process. Reserve funds include special education, $229,095, facilities maintenance and repair, $154,172, and there's a revolving fund. It's a facilities use fund that Michelle and I are kind of exploring and trying to understand. We had to call Matt Angel to get some feedback from last year about this fund, and we're still working on that. It's $297,722.
Speed Demon, back on 39 really quick. Question 59, can our needed supplies be bought with other schools? That's the cooperative purchasing policy that the school district's allowed to do.
Yep.
DJD for reference.
Thank you.
So if we want to purchase with Fremont, let's do it.
Yep, sounds great. Yes, Annie?
I understand that there's a limit on how much you can have in a school that is less than the town's. I think it's 2.5% of the general fund, if I'm correct. What?
I think you're right.
Okay.
I looked to Michelle.
I think so. I guess my question is, does that 2.5% involve a combination of all funds, or is it kind of just for an education fund, or what?
There are various, I'll jump on that. There are various different types of funds. You can see here we have reserve funds versus revolving funds. Mm-hmm. The specific fund that you're referring to is, in the last, I'd say, 3-ish years, the RSAs were changed governing school districts, which allow school districts to retain a portion of their unreserved fund balance if that has been authorized by the voters, which I believe it has been authorized here. There are no funds set aside at this time in that it's an unrestricted reserve, if you will, which is different from these reserves, which are specific in nature. You cannot use money from the special education fund if you have a vehicle breakdown and you need to purchase a new dump truck. It's specific for that purpose. The fund that you're talking about is not specified in that manner. It's a contingency fund, if you will. It's a reserve that allows you to carry funds from year to year for unforeseen expenditures.
And the thing is,
So that is subject to the 2 or 2.5% calculation. These are not, because they're specific in nature and outside that.
Okay. I guess, just talking to the school board, I hope that you guys are going to put forward a couple of warrant articles for, to start to build these up. I don't think, Budget Committee could do it too, I suppose, but.
I'm not sure we'll be doing it this year. We've, again, had conversations because we're looking at funding for them, but two things. One, the contingency, I believe, in Chapter 32, I believe that's the 2.5%. That has to be voted on, I believe, every year. All right. So you want to be careful having a contingency fund this year, and then all of a sudden next year it's not voted on. But to set up funds, I think that what we're talking about, we're looking at other vehicles. And again, this is the three of us. Again, I don't mean to be slighting the school board, but I'm not going to bring something to you that, hey, we're talking about maybe we're going to be, I would rather have meetings with the three of us and then present to you rather than it could be maybe this is what we're thinking. That's a waste of time. So we've been looking at that, and we're looking at other vehicles to fund those funds.
Good.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Regarding reserves, is it true that the amount of reserves that you hold, I don't know if it's this unrestricted unreserved fund or if, it's specific funds, actually will have an impact or can have an impact on an interest rate should you decide to take out a bond? So that would be another reason, which wasn't mentioned previously.
I love that, thank you.
That's a very
Forgot
good
to mention
point.
that,
To get a
Mary.
better rate.
Great.
When I apply for insurance, my credit rating and all that other stuff.
Absolutely.
That is a very good point, and I have actually been through bond issues and have dealt with the bond rating agencies, and they look at a school district like any other organization. It's a municipality, quasi-governmental agency, but they look to see how the financial aspect is being managed and if the organization's positioned for unforeseen challenges.
Okay. May I continue?
Please.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The travel budget by federal standards would be over 71,000 miles. Who is traveling all these miles? Why is administrative professional development part of this line? Administrative professional development costs were subtracted from the true travel expenditures. Shouldn't this be funded by evolving accounts set up for this purpose? And the answer is they do cover many types of travel. This includes driving, airfare, and other travel-related expenses. I've been over this a few times tonight. We definitely want to break that out into subcategories and clean that up as a team. And so thank you for asking that question. We're looking into it. Who does tech maintenance? Is it a contracted service? And if so, does this contract go out to bid? Is it something that could be done in-house, district-wide, if a person were to be hired on staff? I just wanted to quickly mention, I just thought of this, and I think it's important to know. I don't know what happened here before, but it is really, really important to me that things are either done by getting competitive quotes or through going through the true bid process. And I know that everyone here is kind of wondering if that happened in the past. I can't speak to that, but I want you to hear from me that I wasn't even comfortable pulling $33,000 out to build one wall. You know what I'm saying? We got that down by $20,000, and I know I keep saying that example, but I just want you to hear that's the way we're going to do business here under my leadership, okay? So it's totally about making sure that the taxpayers' dollars are spent effectively, but it's also to build credibility with the community, so when we say we need something, they know that we're being sincere and that we are trying to be fiscally responsible before we ask for money, right? So I just wanted you to hear that. So in general, this is handled on a case-by-case basis in-house by the shop teachers and facility staff. If an item needs service that is above and beyond what they can handle, there are local vendors brought in. There's no contracted service agreement. The department also receives a number of donations of supplies and service repairs each year. What vehicles are owned by the district? There's a neat little chart there that Michelle put together for you, kind of makes it easy. Hope that helps. I'm going to go on to page 42 if everyone's comfortable. I don't want to, what did you call me, Lightning McQueen, Corey?
Speedy McQueen.
Oh, I love Lightning McQueen. I love
I'm going to say one more sarcastic comment. We want you to break down these walls, but yeah, you put one up already.
What is the number of regular ed high employees that make up this amount? There's 46 employees, so whatever the account was is right there for you to reference, whoever asked. How many employees make up this amount? Please explain other. This is one employee that makes up this amount, 40,513, that account that was there. How many support staff high make up this amount? There's two employees. And how many tech support high make up this amount? There's one technology person at the high school. So the folks who asked those questions, there are the answers for you. So the next question on page 43 is, this works out to $367 per month per copier. What is the cost of the lease versus supplies, and what controls are there on supplies? The annual equipment copier lease is $32,000. The remainder per copier costs district-wide. Supplies, staples, paper are purchased by the individual schools. Principals monitor the use of supplies at the building level. So I really wouldn't dare to say to a teacher, you can only have this amount of paper for your class if you're teaching first grade versus third or whatever. We don't do that per se. I do want to impress upon everyone that we are going to have a conversation about per building, per pupil, per teacher purchasing in the future, and taking a look at kind of that whole process about the way the district's set up through the budget process, because it did seem when we analyzed the budget in the first round a little bit wavy, that one building had more here and another one had more there, and I just want it to be fair for everybody. So we'll be looking at that and talking about that in the future. I don't think Michelle and I are going to sleep for the next year, but we'll keep going. How many students are attending, and what is the parent contribution? This line covers the fees for the, we already talked about that.
Yeah, we did that one.
We already did this one.
It had to be one duplicate question after all the reading that we did. $15,836.39 in administrative professional development. Is there a method to recover our investment should the administrators leave the district? $14,500 in administrative professional development travel. Is this in addition to the travel stipends received? Policy GCBB outlines how the district can recoup money paid for administrators' professional development in the form of coursework. We can recoup some costs, but it is limited in scope and it is only for administrators. Professional development travel is in addition to travel stipends, which covers in-district travel. Page 44. How many employees make up these respective amounts? Lines, there's lots of them. And please further define other special ed. Special education salaries, there are 3 employees that make up this amount, $188,396. Support staff salaries, there are 11 employees that make up that amount, $247,936, 6 cents. Other professional services for special education includes any contracted related service required by an individual education plan as determined by IEP teams. Examples of services are consultation and direct instruction from a teacher of the deaf for hearing impaired students, tutoring services for students hospitalized or determined to need additional academic support after school hours, behavioral support from a board certified behavior analyst, and speech and language consult services. I want to be clear, that really should say not including, but limited, not limited to, but including. In addition, some students require assessments as part of the eligibility process to be completed by outside vendors. The number of contracted personnel can vary based on student needs. Yes.
On the first one on that page, is that, I don't know what those line items refer to, but is that high school?
I believe so, Jody.
Yep.
Yeah, the
Joe?
3 employees in the line.
Yes.
Yeah, the 27 is in there.
Yes.
See the 27 in the line?
I have it
There.
memorized.
Oh, okay.
Good job. Okay. Page 45. I know you're looking into these, and I'm looking forward to your findings. For now, please explain the difference between the categories. Online subscription access fees, information maintenance services, district-wide software licensing, and if there's any overlap in these. Also, please provide a list of the 5 most costly software subscriptions and their respective costs. So we've done that for you. One of the online subscription fees, they include a variety of web-based applications, the vast majority of which are curriculum-based. District-wide software denotes an actual software program that is purchased, such as Gradebook, Frontline, Infinite Campus, while district-wide software could include specific curriculum-based software. It is predominantly for the management of the school system. The information maintenance service contains such licensings as Sophos Firewall, antivirus and encryption software, along with the district wire backup software, wireless licensing, video storage for meetings, and website licensing, among others. As I read this slide, I think back to that movie when I was a kid with Matthew Broderick, where he hacks into the
War Games.
War Games, yeah, I love that movie. So it's like, yeah, these kids these days, right? Top 5 software expenses by cost. Frontline, which is the staff management software. You can read all of this. Edgenuity is $27,500, and that is for online credit and competency recovery at the high school. Infinite Campus is our student information system. There's a Microsoft license agreement, which is obviously Excel, Word, and things like that. And Dreambox is an adaptive math program. It's grant funded for 2 years, and it expires in 2 years.
What grade is the Dreambox for?
It's typically 1 through 8.
1 through 8?
There is some possibility for application at the high school, but we haven't adopted that yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I see that Dreambox is 2 years, Microsoft license, Infinite Campus, online credit recovery. Are those other ones, are those all annual fees?
They're annual. Tell me if I'm wrong, somebody, but I don't recall it here. Pretty sure they're annual, right, Michelle? It would be logical that they're annual. Should I find out otherwise, I will let you know.
No, they were annual.
You sure you're not a lawyer? Sheldon?
That was my question.
It says district-wide software denotes actual software program that is purchased, such as Gradebook. So once you purchase the program, you still have additional annual fees for it?
Correct.
A service contract, probably.
Any other questions on 45? All right, here we go. 46. How many employees in each, and please define other? There's 1 employee that makes up $139,050. There are 3 employees that make up $173,760, $132, and we gave you the account numbers. 1 employee that makes up $128,75, and 2 employees that make up $119,220, $760. What locations make up this amount, and what are the cost breakdowns for each? This amount is the cost for the diesel fuel, district-wide, $90,000. What are the total number of employees covered by this amount? 10 general fund, health and dental, 5 million, blah, blah, blah. Approximately 275 employees. Yes?
The question about the diesel.
Yeah.
90,000 diesel. Diesel fuel, is that for vehicles?
Yes, I believe so. Correct, Michelle? We use propane for buildings, right?
Right.
I learned a lot, Jim, from this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Steve can answer. Go ahead, Tony.
Diesel fuel should be number 2 fuel oil. It's heating oil.
Oh,
it's heating oil. Okay, so this, when it says district heating oil, the question was, where is the district paying for heating oil? Because there's heating oil for the other schools, except for middle school, I think, which has the heat pump.
Yeah.
So should this say number 2 fuel?
Well, I'm just wondering, what's the distribution of the 90,000? Is it a building on the seminary campus, or because all the other schools?
It could be any one location. You can use it at the high school. It depends on how many gallons.
Okay.
The storage facilities at each school is 10,000 gallons storage tank.
Right, but the high school would be listed under the diesel or the oil, the fuel oil, for the high school, right?
Correct. Each location should be listed on the group.
Michelle has an answer specific.
And they are.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I think we're going down the wrong path. This refers to a transportation line item, function 2700, so it's relative to the buses, not the building.
So it is diesel fuel.
Yes.
Buses.
Vehicles, okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
Because I thought it was 8 vehicles, and I'm like, what do you?
I'm really excited because I just went from right to wrong to right. That was pretty cool. See that happen? I like that. All right, so can professional development for teachers and other district employees be tied to an agreement with each recipient for a longer term of service employment than would otherwise imply? In each instance, it would be up to the discretion of the superintendent as to whether or not the agreed extension is exercised. This would require negotiation with the union. This is the answer. It would require negotiation with the union. It would have to be clearly spelled out in the collective bargaining agreement. So the last slide, there are actually 2 left. I left one doozy for the end because I wanted to kick us off. But if I were asked to restore money to the budget or add it, folks wanted to know, I would reduce the number of teachers that we're letting, the positions that we're letting go. Obviously, it's, I said in my budget presentation the first night that 8.5 felt like a stretch, but that's what it took to get us to a flat year-to-year or 2% decrease. So I had recommended 6 or 6.5. Administrative support for the business manager and curriculum director is something that is really, really very clearly needed after this last month. NESDEC, the New England School Development Council, I have talked to the board and would encourage you all to be aware that we would like them to come and do a study of our facilities, which kind of some of the questions alluded to, building capacity, what do we need to do. That kind of study is incredibly time consuming, so it would be great to have an organization help us with that. It was really funny because when I looked up the NESDEC proposed enrollments for this district, they were off by 1 student from our actual enrollment right now. It's pretty cool. I don't know if they do that every time, but I've said that before. And then restoring that $25,000 for professional development. I personally cut that out of the budget right before it went to publish. I just felt like we needed to come in at a flat or below. Now, I want to be clear. We're going to be fine, right? Things are going to be fine. We're going to work together and we're going to figure things out. Okay? Yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with you. Next week, the school board will be actually looking at the recommendation to be sent to the budget committee. Am I correct, Superintendent, that we will be discussing perhaps these and perhaps adding some of them or not adding them to the budget? These are something that's going to be, in other words, these are going to be for discussion next week. I know you and I haven't set the agenda yet, but I do know we have talked a little bit. So this will probably be part of our discussion next week if we add things or not add things. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I was answering the question. What would you add back?
Okay, well, I'm just saying that this is what your question is, what would I add? I'd add these. Right. But I wanted the people to understand that we will, I believe you and I, when we set the agenda, we will be discussing these 4 items.
Thank you, Chair Broderick. I would agree that the appropriate time for that discussion is next week.
So relative to that, will you have some quantifiable numbers attached to these items?
Answer which question?
Can I ask? Can I chime in?
Sure.
I created a spreadsheet. Can I just pull it up really quick?
Why don't we save that?
That'll be for you next week.
Yeah, we'll do it next
So
week.
just, if you could, I assume that you would anyway, but.
Yes.
Could I suggest you send it to the superintendent? Because he and I sit down every Thursday and we'll look at it. And if you want to meet with us Thursday noontime, come on down,
Well, for next Wednesday, it would have to be early next week, but yes.
Whatever, we'll let you know, Corey.
It's ready now. It has all the priority needs listed out, all the reductions listed out, and all the critical needs that have been found in.
But you're going to be discussing it at the school board meeting next week.
Can you share that over on the Google Team Drive?
Okay.
I will put together a presentation for the board next week with some numbers.
Okay. Now, if I may interject, am I correct you are finished?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to say that I believe you have done as we requested, and we have absorbed a lot. My suggestion would be that the school board will look next week at some of the things. We will finalize everything on Wednesday night, and we will then send it to the Budget Committee. So my suggestion is, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of exhausted, and I received information, let alone I had to give it. So I'm prepared to, the superintendent's finished. I don't know how the Budget Committee feels, but I see Jack is nodding his head yes. Yeah. So the only thing is, I want to make sure we have public comment.
Of course, that's on the
And the Budget
agenda.
Committee do what, I mean, if the Budget Committee is not agreeing with the school board, that's your business, you know, but.
I think that we've accomplished what we wanted to do. Does anybody have any further questions? If not, yes.
I have a document.
I don't want to have to talk about it.
Budget committee, and what is it?
It's all of us, it's the documents that Superintendent Ambrose had said, you know, you could get by clicking.
Right, any place that it said click, we printed it for you for tonight. Folks don't love the web, so we wanted to make sure you had paper.
Okay, so thank you so much, very much, thank you.
Mr. Stack, the team.
We now have, the next thing is public comment, and I see you, if you would come up to the microphone, that would be really great, so it goes on the video well.
I got it.
My name is Angela O'Connell. I'm actually from Fremont. My understanding is that I am able to ask questions and make comments in regard to the Sanborn budget.
Please.
Okay, great. I just wanted to confirm that just because I am from Fremont, so thank you. Two things. One is I wanted to share real quickly how we in Fremont fund our trust funds. We have successfully funded our trust funds by actually using balances at the end of the fiscal year that were unexpended, so there's no additional funds raised by taxation. So an example, we have a maintenance trust fund, we have a tuition trust fund, things like that. So I know that there was some discussion about how to budget those, if you will. So we've actually done warrant articles to do that, so no additional taxation by the public. So I just want to make sure that if it's helpful for you guys to hear how we do it in Fremont. The other thing is I'd like to see Mr. Mason's file that you referenced, so I'm not sure if that could be posted publicly as well, but I think that would be very informative.
It'll be on Facebook in about 2 hours.
Okay, thank you. And then my last questions were the 8.5 teachers that were discussed about being reduced. Is there any discussion about who and where those positions would be reduced?
We discussed that on November 1st, that until it is clear who is retiring and from what departments, we don't want to identify specific positions at this time.
Do you know in which building facilities?
I would say that due to student enrollments, the middle school is experiencing quite a bit of a reduction in student enrollments, and that's pretty plain to see if you look at our enrollment sheets, but the positions are spread all over the district.
So would it be safe to say that if there needed to be 8.5 teachers reduced, you would do it based on student enrollment, not necessarily where those teachers currently reside if they're leaving?
It's a very complex process due to the collective bargaining agreement and the, there's, when we reduce staff, there is a process by which teachers have rights based on the collective bargaining agreement. So there's no way I can tell you today exactly where those cuts would be. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm Tammy Kleiner Gluck from Newton. Can you use the microphone?
Sure, I can.
Thank you.
What I'd like to talk about tonight were some comments that I wanted to make at the last school board meeting, so I missed that public comment, and I would like to kind of address both the school board and the budget committee, if that's okay. So, and this is kind of my first shot at giving my input, so I'm going to maybe go over my 3 minutes. The proposed budget that was presented here had a suggested reduction of 8 staff members. This is greatly concerning to me and several other community members. I'd like to hear from the board and the previous person was referencing that as well, how they foresee this will help advance the school board's goal of student success. If you are reducing teachers, you're reducing direct instructional contact with students in a classroom. And I would like to know what kind of adjustments would be made to the curriculum and course offerings when there's a staff reduction of 8 teachers. And then tonight, we had another question that was addressing or asking about increasing that to 16 staff members. So I'm asking the board to really think about this in a different way. What other cuts and consolidations can be made to save the classroom teachers that are proposed in this budget? This is a school board and a budget committee working for the school district, and your number one priority should always be student achievement and student success. And classroom teachers have the most direct contact and impact on our business, which is students, and providing a successful education for them. So that's what we do here. That's our business. People talk about a business model and treating this more like a business. So that's my first comment. Secondly, if you're serving on this committee, I'm hoping you're here because you want to make a difference to increase student achievement and outcomes for our children. And if that's not your goal, I'm wondering why you're serving on this committee. Taking the time out of the administration to look at the minutia and the detail of travel and cell phones, instead of taking this time as a budget committee to address budget figures, or the school board to look at how can we address our capital improvement issues, how can we address our reserves, that's, to me, where discussions should be. Not looking at travel for administrators. That's just me. And lastly, my last comment is that I'm hoping the board will consider putting in some of the suggestions that the superintendent just made in that last slide. And in addition to that, the student assistance counselor. The comment that was made at the beginning that there were 15 suspensions related to, with 10 or more days related to a drug and alcohol issue here at the high school since you started, that's significant. There's an issue and a concern, and me being a parent with a student in the school, and many friends of mine with kids that I care about, that I hope you do too, that student assistance counselor will get put back into this budget. And when you look at these budget reductions that are proposed here, and I know there's going to be more coming from the budget committee. I sat on this committee last year. I know how this works. These reductions in staff aren't good for kids. They don't meet the priorities expressed in that survey that the community took that was presented to the board on October 4th. The top 3 priorities from the stakeholders there in this document, hopefully you guys have this, are school culture and climate, staff retention, and having adequate resources. That's what the community wants, that's what the stakeholders want that reply to your survey, and that's who you're representing on these committees. So I hope you will make decisions to meet what's important to the people that elect you. Thank you.
Are there any further public comments? Please come forward.
Sorry about the tag team. Barry Gluck from Newton. As a long-time past budget committee member, I served on the committee for 9 years. When I was reviewing the budget that was presented this year, I had some real concerns. And I'm not going to get into a lot of the minutia, the detail, but I think part of the problem I think a big part of the problem, is that the budget committee's responsibilities are to balance the needs of the school district and the educational needs of the students with the taxpayers' ability to pay. And in a vacuum, when the goals of the district and the needs, the educational needs of the students have not been presented in the budget in a way in which your expenditures, when you're requesting funding, matches a particular goal, an educational goal, when it's not presented in such a format, then we get into the minutia of copier paper. Because and essentially what is happening is I was looking at all of these questions, and the majority, there were a few actually that didn't, but the majority of the questions were really focused on one side of the equation, one side of the budget committee's responsibility. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with the fact that the budget was presented in such a way that didn't match the needs of the educational goals of the students and the goals of the district to the expenditures. And I'm just hoping that that's something that you take a hard look at. Thank you.
I think you had your hand up.
Hi, my name is Dawn Dutton.
Is that on? It may have been turned off.
Red light's on.
Okay. Okay.
It's my first time with a microphone, so.
Last name, Dawn?
Dutton, D-U-T-T-O-N. I guess I just wanted to come up here and speak for other parents and just let you guys know that you're looking at numbers, and that I know that's your job, but there are students that are being affected by everything that's being talked about. And I really like where Superintendent Ambrose is going with the special education and adding funds for that. I don't like hearing about teacher cuts because when I go and I literally have to fight for my children for services that they deserve and they are by law allowed to have, when I go to them and I have to fight for that, and they tell me that they're doing the best they can, but they don't have enough teachers, they don't have enough staff, that's a problem. So to hear that more teachers' positions are going to be cut, that concerns me. I'd like to see if you guys can look a little bit deeper and figure out other ways to make some cuts. But I don't know that teachers in special education are the way to go. I'd like to see increases. I have almost a little over $9,000 a year tax bill. Do I want to see it go up? No. But do I want to see my children and all the other children that aren't necessarily getting what they need? Do I want to see them get that? Yeah, I do. And if it costs me a little more every month in my taxes, that's okay with me. And I know it's okay with a lot of other parents too, because we literally have to fight to get our children what we need in special education and 504 plans. And it's not okay. And so I'd like to see a little bit more, I guess, I'd like to see you guys look a little bit more into the students and what they really need and kind of go from there. But I would like you to just take a little bit bigger look at not getting rid of as many teachers and funding special education better, because we are lacking in those departments, in my opinion, and a lot of other parents' opinions who are also fighting to get their children what they need.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? We will have committee comment, Cheryl. You didn't have to go down there. It's on the agenda.
Well, I'm speaking as a member of the public, Cheryl Gannon from Kingston.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work that the administrators have put into answering the questions here and helping to clarify things. And I appreciate Superintendent Ambrose's perspective as someone coming from the outside, not only from outside of our district, from outside of our state. And the comments that he made, that he has observed about the lack of trust in this community and lack of collaboration to work towards bettering our schools and work towards ensuring that the public understands and supports what's needed for our schools. Our schools and the children here are what make up our community. And if there's a lack of trust, these problems that we're seeing with students turning to alcohol and drugs are only going to increase. And there's no money amount that you can put on that. That's going to destroy our community and our families here. So we do need to look at a balance, and we do need to work on ways to come together and learn to trust each other. So that perspective I appreciate, because many of us here in the room have been embroiled in it for many years, and sometimes we lose that perspective, and it's good to hear what someone from the outside has to see and their opinions on that. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Are you?
Yeah, I don't think we have a school board comment in regard to...
Yes, you do have school board comment, because you're a guest here. We're not cutting you off.
No, it's all good. Corey Mason Newton. I'm actually really directing this to the Budget Committee anyways. I want to applaud and thank all of you on asking many questions to our school district leadership team that are operations related. Not only that, that are also acting on your behalf as fiduciary agents for our communities. I'm gonna ask you a favor. When you go through and look at the budget, disseminate the answers that you've heard this year, last year, and the years before, think about every decision that you're making and how is that building community and culture. I'm gonna ask you a favor for every decision and every time you go ahead and say, do we need this, do we not need this? Are you building up student outcomes? Everything that this school district's about is about increasing outcomes, is about going ahead and building the leaders of tomorrow. You guys are helping us out with that process. And if you go ahead and remove things that are really important, I hope you understand the impacts of that. So if you don't know what the impacts of those student outcomes are, we didn't do a good enough job in asking the questions. So I'm going to ask you, again, a favor. Do you want to continue to build your community culture? And when you reduce things, are you doing that? Thank you, guys. Thank you, leadership.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, committee comments. Yes.
Actually, I'm addressing this to the administrators that were here this evening.
Okay.
A lot of the comments and questions that you saw this evening were not based on specifically your budget presentation, but past culture of distrust and attempts at sabotaging the work of people that are elected officials. And so don't take it personally when somebody challenges something that actually happened last year, but this is our first chance to ask a question about how last year's budget was handled. And hopefully this year, once we get through the budget process, deliberative session, elections, and a budget is either voted up or down, the budget committee will have a chance to meet at that point and say, be proactive in next year and say, you know, we have concerns in this area, we'd like to see them addressed or not. But rather than waiting until October or November, when it's reactive, I would rather see us be proactive. I mean, we had a member in the past who said, you know, she hadn't signed up to attend anything more than maybe 4 or 5 meetings per year. I spend a lot of my life at meetings. I will make the time to be able to have some more meetings so that we can start earlier in the process.
Okay. Any other comments?
Sure.
Cheryl.
Question about the pivot table that we received, the Excel spreadsheet. Was there going to be an offer of some training for us on how to use that? Because I'm finding it very overwhelming. I'm not really sure how to use that.
Is that something that you have time to sit with Cheryl if she were to make an appointment with you to kind of go through it a little bit?
Connect with me.
Does everybody else understand it?
I agree with you.
I can help out if you'd like. I'm pretty good at that
Well,
stuff.
it would be nice if there were 2 or 3 people who would like some support.
I'm not asking for personal.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of you can come and sit down.
Look, if it was only one person, we're happy to help you out. We're here to support everyone in getting the information that they need to successfully adopt a budget. But if there are 2 people or 3 people who have the same question, then if you could make a simultaneous appointment, that'd be awesome, because it just saves Michelle hours.
We will be using the pivot table when we meet next Thursday together, going through the budget. That's kind of the process that we agreed on, was to go through the whole thing together. And so we'll be using that, all of us. So, you know, if you can get your familiarity with it in between now and then, that would probably be helpful to you. We will have one of the computers from here so that we can, you know, do it, because in Chromebooks we can't get into the pivot table. Are there any other? Yes, Sandy.
In light of the public comment, that is exactly what we are supposed to do. The mission of the Budget Committee. It is the mission of the Sanborn Regional School District Budget Committee to present a budget that funds education with prudent consideration of the costs to the community. And that's been referenced, and that's clearly our mission. And one thing I want to thank you about, or thank you for, is answering the questions that were submitted by the board and by the Budget Committee each time, so that there is transparency and there is a completion of the Budget Committee goals. Number 1, understand the funding needed for delivery of education in the district. And I trust that you are presenting what you believe is needed funding for delivery of education in our district. I appreciated your last slide, you know, with what you would add back in. That's very helpful. And number 2, prepare a budget that is reflective of the costs to meet those goals. And I trust that you're doing that for us so that we can do our job. And number 3, communicate depth of investigation and reasoning to the citizens in the community. I appreciate that that is one of your goals as well, you know, and all the work that you folks have put in. And I know it's your job, but we can't do our mission or accomplish our goals if we can't work together with you. And I sincerely appreciate that happening.
Yeah, Corey.
One, round of applause and thank you to the leadership team, all this administrative assistants and all who weren't here today, who have put all the work in. I'm assuming, it took us how many hours to get through 70 some odd questions?
A lot.
I'm assuming that those 70 some odd questions took a couple weeks, over a fair amount of time and energy, especially through a holiday season. So applause to you, and thank you again for the questions. Congratulations to our community coming together. Thank you.
Just one more question on, so our next meeting is next Thursday. If we have additional questions, because we were asked not to ask certain types of questions tonight, should we submit those to you?
Please.
I just want to be clear, though. Another full round of 78 questions. It took 2,000 hours to answer those. Okay?
There won't be anything like that.
We can't do another slide deck like this again, like that. I just want to be careful, because I'm saying questions were supposed to be submitted about the budget by last Monday. If there's a follow-up question to one of these questions that we couldn't get to tonight, I would entertain answering that, but I cannot support another full round of questions. It's just too much time.
I don't believe that you would be having that. I think that there were a couple of questions that, needed some more that I know.
I'm just saying I can't do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to be nice, I don't want to.
Submit that as a question.
Right.
Say that again?
Right. There were a couple that we were asked to please resubmit.
Yeah,
So
yes,
we'll be
those
doing
ones
that.
we're happy to, follow-ups, we're happy to help,
Yeah.
It's
No
just-
new questions.
Yeah, we couldn't go another round of this. Whew.
I don't think there's much left that would be able to be, that would still be asked.
And is there a date?
As soon as possible, please.
Yeah.
No later than end of the day, Monday.
Okay, because we need to know when to submit them to our chair.
Yeah, if you get them to me by Sunday night, then I'll be able to get them to Superintendent Ambrose first thing on Monday. And
That would be great, because then we can work on them and get them out to you.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what's been said and thank the superintendent and the business manager and the leadership team for all the thorough effort and investigation that it took to pull all this information that wasn't particularly accessible to you.
Thank you.
And do the presentation and the incredible amount of thought on how to do a budget that will serve the community, will serve the schools, and help the children, and also focus on areas of improvement that, the kids definitely need, and how to pay for all of that. I've sat through many budget committee and school board meetings over the years, and this is by far the most thorough effort that I've ever seen. And I think the community as well can be proud of the work that's being done here. And thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other comments? You folks, I don't have anything left to say myself. You guys have said it all. I'd like once again to thank both of you and to thank all of you out here for all the work that you put in on these and the input also from the public. So, yes.
I was thinking of closing our portion of the meeting.
Please.
Okay. There's one thing that I was remiss about. I realized halfway through, Taryn Lytle is not here, school board member. I'm sorry about that. I should have told you at the beginning. Okay? All right. Okay, so as far as the school board, any other things you want to bring up, school board?
I move for adjournment.
Well, no, I have a few more things to do, Larry. I know you want to go. Sorry, I just have the announcements and we'll be out of here. Okay, the next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting will be held Wednesday, December 6, 2017, from 6 to 9 p.m. in the library at the Sanborn Regional High School, 17 Danville Road. I will let you talk about the budget committee. Now I will take, Larry, a motion.
So moved.
Larry Heath made a motion.
Second.
Corey Mason, easy to write to Jim Baker, I guess, made the second. Any discussion? Could I have Jim Baker? Yes. Larry? Corey?
Yes.
Pam? I'm for it. That's unanimous.
Okay.
We are adjourned.
Move to adjourn. Jim Doggett, second. Sandy? All in favor? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, folks.